Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting of April 21st, 2015. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam President. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos present. President Breed.
Here.
Breed present. Supervisor Campos.
Present.
Campos present. Supervisor Christensen.
Present.
Christensen present. Supervisor Cohen.
Here.
Cohen present. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell present. Supervisor Kim. Kim not present. Supervisor Marr. Marr not present. Supervisor Tang.
Present.
Tang present. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener present. Supervisor Yee.
Present.
Yee present. Madam President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it
Stands one nation,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any communications?
There are no communications today, Madam President.
Okay, colleagues, are there any changes to the May 17th board meeting minutes? Seeing no changes, can I have a motion to approve? Motion by Supervisor Campos, seconded by Supervisor Yee. We'll take that without objection, colleagues, after the public comment session. Okay, Madam Clerk, can you please read item number 1?
The first item of business today is the policy discussion between the Honorable Mayor Edwin Lee and members of the Board of Supervisors. The Mayor may provide initial remarks for up to 5 minutes. The President will then recognize the eligible supervisors who submitted questions from Districts 1 and 3. Follow-up questions are in order as long as the entire discussion does not exceed 5 minutes per supervisor.
Okay. The first question is from our colleague from District 1, Supervisor. Oh, I forget, the mayor has opening remarks, everybody. And I also want to mention that we're joined by Supervisor Kim and Supervisor Marr. So, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, President Breed. Good afternoon, everyone. Yesterday, I joined our homeless outreach team, and they engaged people that are living on our streets. We encountered a number of people who want to change their lives for the better, and their first step was relocating to our city's navigation center. The center is providing hope and opportunities and helps us deliver on our promise to get people the critical services that they need. And I want to thank our entire Board of Supervisors for your partnership on this issue. It's my hope that this approach will help homeless people reconnect with their loved ones at home, move off the streets, go into stable housing or residential treatment programs, and begin to stabilize their lives. And as you know, part of the donation to the Navigation Center will fund master leasing of single-room occupancy units so that clients can successfully transition out of the Navigation Center. This is another rung of our housing ladder. And at the same time, we are making progress on our housing goals with ambitious legislation and funding proposals. And we have been tracking our progress every step of the way, so we're all held accountable for our efforts in creating housing for all. 14 months into our 2014 pledge, we have opened the doors to 4,263 new homes, with 31% affordable. I'm proud that these new homes deliver on our city's promise to create a city for everyone. We'll continue to build more housing for our residents, and in fact, a few weeks ago, some of you joined me in kicking off a collaborative big tent process to put a housing bond before the voters this November. As I've done with other major policy priorities that are so important to our city, I'm asking experts and stakeholders from all over the city to join me in crafting a consensus measure. And in this case, we're asking 75 neighborhood leaders and housing experts to come together and craft this bond proposal. I'm glad to be working closely with Supervisor London Breed and Supervisor Julie Christensen on this effort as well. We'll propose a bond of about $250 million. I know that's under discussion, but it's a significant investment, and we hope not to raise taxes at the same time. It will rehabilitate public housing, provide more affordable housing to low-income San Franciscans, and create opportunities for middle-class families to own and rent homes in San Francisco. This bond, which I announced in my State of the City address in January, is part of the investments we're making, not only in housing, but education, transportation, and more, and will fulfill our shared prosperity agenda with the goal of making sure San Francisco remains a city for everyone. Let's get on with the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And our first question will come from the supervisor from District 1, Supervisor Eric Marr.
Thank you, President Breed. Mr. Mayor, thank you for being here. Last Wednesday, Supervisor Avalos and Hillary Ronan from Supervisor Campos' office and I participated in the Fight for 15, taking over and shutting down a McDonald's in the Mission District at 6 a.m. in the morning, representing a national movement of workers, fast food workers, retail workers, fighting for $15 an hour. As you know, I'm really proud that you and our board and city supported groundbreaking legislation last year that will raise our minimum wage, as well as provide predictable scheduling and job retention protections for part-time and on-call chain store workers in San Francisco, really helping 40,000 workers deal with those protections with our Retail Workers Bill of Rights. In order for these new rights to have any impact, we need to ensure that our ability to enforce these laws is sufficient. This means that staffing levels of the Office of Labor Standards Enforcement, or OLSE, have to be increased, but it also means that we need to fund community-based organizations that can supplement our ability to reach out to workers who may be reticent to claim their rights. Can we count on your office to create the funding for these critical needs through our upcoming budget process?
Thank you, Supervisor Marr, for that question and for being a partner on passing the nation's highest minimum wage last year. I'm proud of our city. I'm proud of our voters because very soon, more than 60,000 working San Franciscans will get a raise. And as you know, the minimum wage increases to $12.25 per hour, effective May 1st. I mentioned this because I'm taking every opportunity I can to raise awareness about this. We need to make sure that everyone who employs a low-wage worker and everyone out there earning a minimum wage knows about this increase on May 1st. I encourage every supervisor to communicate with their constituents, keep raising awareness about this through your newsletters, your community meetings, and your commercial corridor walks. And that brings us to your question about enforcement, Supervisor Marr, and I believe that an overwhelming majority of San Francisco small business owners know the law and will follow the law. They do care about the workers, and in many cases, they see them as valued friends and critical components to the success of their businesses. I have every expectation to believe that people will receive the wage increases to which they are entitled. But in the case of malicious intent or simple misunderstanding, sometimes enforcement is necessary. And luckily for our city, we do have a strong labor standards enforcement office that helps ensure everyone receives the rights that they deserve. We are blessed with a strong workers' rights advocate community that helps ensure monolingual, low-wage, and immigrant workers know their rights and exercise them when needed. I know that San Francisco is a model for the rest of the nation and when it comes to enforcing our strong labor laws. As far as your question about staff resources, Supervisor, I know that some advocacy organizations have proposed certain enhancements to city staff budgets and for increases in our city contracts to community-based organizations to do this important work. I've requested our Office of Labor Standards to review these requests and weigh them alongside other staffing and budgetary needs. As you know, Supervisor, through your position on the Budget Committee, spending choices cannot be done in a vacuum. But I'm committed to putting everything on the table and making choices together with the Board of Supervisors, all of you in a collaborative way, and we've done that every year since I've been mayor. This budget review process really does begin with the departments, and in this case, with the Office of Labor Standards Enforcement. So thank you for your question, and let me reiterate that please get the word out on the new minimum wage that takes effect on May 1st, and I will work collaboratively with this body to make sure funding for the things we know are most important get funded.
Thank you, Supervisor Marr. And the next question will come from the supervisor from District 3, Supervisor Julie Christensen.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. I certainly applaud your emphasis on housing. I look forward to working with you on the housing bond. As you well know, District 3 is a neighborhood that has traditionally embraced its working class families. It's a very dense district. In conjunction with the housing we so desperately need and the housing security we crave, you and I have discussed transportation as a natural follow-on to that. District 3 is a very dense district, and we swell each day with shoppers at Union Square, workers in the financial district, visitors to Chinatown and Fisherman's Wharf. And so today I wanted to ask you about the Central Subway. So Phase 2 will be completed in a few years, but brings the subway only as far as Chinatown. The report from last fall that the TAMTA and planning did indicates that the ridership on the T-line would increase from 74,000 people to 115,000 people a day if only we added those two stops in North Beach and Fisherman's Wharf, and that the time required to get from Moscone Center to Fisherman's Wharf would be cut in half on mass transit. What can we as a city do to signal our seriousness about pursuing Phase 3? How can we improve transit and reduce congestion in District 3?
Thank you, Supervisor, for that question. First, I'm very excited about the opening of the Central Subway, which is scheduled to begin service in 2019. I can't wait. And it will directly link Chinatown to Union Square, Moscone Center, Mission Bay, and 3rd Street, while providing connections to BART and the city's Muni Metro system. As a result of years of planning, community input, engineering, and construction, this project will be a transformative economic engine for the residents of District 3 while drawing additional visitors to businesses located there. Well, as you know, our city is undertaking a number of major transportation projects in financial partnership with regional, state, and federal partners. In addition to the Central Subway, we're building a new Presidio Parkway to replace Doyle Drive. We have the Transbay Transit Center. We have bus rapid transit on Van Ness. And we've done a lot of work planning for how to bring the existing transportation systems into a state of good repair. In 2013, my Transportation Task Force identified $10 billion in necessary investments by 2030. Our San Francisco voters endorsed this effort with the passage of Prop A last year, which authorized $500 million in much-needed initial funding to support the existing transportation network. It took many years to get the Central Subway project moving, and as you know, projects of this scale and complexity take time and funding to plan, let alone to build. Well, as we consider the needs of the entire city and region when making big transportation decisions, we also need to think about which ones can move forward right now. In other words, which ones are shovel-ready. I know how much you have worked with the community and local merchants on this issue, and I believe the city needs to continue that good work so that we really understand the benefits of a Central Subway extension that could bring, what that could bring, while establishing realistic completion timelines, which will enable us a better way to understand when funding decisions will need to be made and will be made consistently to get that project done. Thank you, Supervisor.
Thank you, Supervisor Christensen, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for being here with us today. Now, colleagues, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, would you please read the consent agenda?
The consent calendar items 2 through 18 are considered routine unless a member objects. An item may be removed and considered separately.
Supervisor Yee.
Yes, I'd like to remove item number 9.
Okay. Seeing no other members, we will remove item number 9 and roll call vote on the remaining items.
On items 2 through 18, minus number 9, Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Aye. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr?
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener?
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos? Avalos, aye. There are 11 ayes.
These items are passed, adopted, and approved unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 9?
Item 9, resolution to approve the two settlements of two unlitigated claims filed by ASI Fox Plaza and APN Fox Plaza against the city for approximately $3.4 million.
Supervisor Yee?
Thank you, President Bree. I put this so that there could be a minor amendment that would be made, and I'm going to turn it over to Deputy City Attorney Given.
Okay.
Deputy City Attorney John Givner. There's just a typo in the short and long titles of this resolution. Instead of APN Fox Plaza LLC, it should say ASN Fox Plaza LLC in both the short and long titles. So we would request that the board make that amendment.
Okay, Supervisor Yee, do you move to make that amendment?
I move it.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Yee, seconded by Supervisor Campos. Without objection, the amendment passed. And on the other underlying item, can we, as amended, can we take that same house, same call? Same, without objection, this item passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 19?
Item 19, resolution to approve the contract with Cypress Security to provide armed and unarmed security services in the approximate amount of $38.3 million.
Okay. Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. I know that I had brought up questions about the armed services last week, and so I just want to appreciate SFMTA taking the time to draft a memo on some of the questions that I had asked, and I see Director Riskin here, and I just had some additional questions. So the memo did address some of the training questions that I had brought up in terms of what type of training the security guards got, and last week we were told that they got 16 hours total of gun training, and it looks like they get a little bit more than that, which is really good to see, and I think and comforting. I also, in the memo, you also talked about which transit agencies also use contracted security guards with arms, and it's good to see what other jurisdictions are doing. But it didn't actually explore any jurisdictions that didn't use arms. So I guess I would push again, did you look at agencies that don't use any armed services and kind of what are the outcomes of that? Were there robberies in those cases? Did we also explore other types of deterrents? Are there other types of deterrents that are just as effective as having a gun out on the street? And so that was some of the questions that I had. I also read the article where some of the Muni employees talked about how late at night it made them feel much more secure to have armed security when there aren't a lot of folks on the street, and I actually understand that need. I think my concern is more during the daytime on Powell and Market, Hyde and Beach, these really high traffic, high volume areas. Is it really realistic, for someone to take out a gun when there are all these people kind of milling around the street, and kind of what is the protocol that's set in those areas? It's kind of a litany of questions. I know I have a couple more, but I'll just start with that.
Okay, Director Riskin, are you going to respond to that?
I will do my best.
Okay.
President Breed, members of the board, Ed Riskin, Director of Transportation, and through the chair to Supervisor Kim, I first of all appreciate your comments and questions, your concerns about the use of armed services. I think the idea of contracting for armed services is not something that we enter into lightly, so I appreciate the various comments that the board made previously and the opportunity to come back and try to address some of those questions. So in terms of looking to what the practice in the industry is, we reached out to somewhat comparable systems, both in California or in the Bay Area and nationwide, and every one of them, without exception, had as a standard practice using armed personnel to protect the employees that collect revenue. So I guess we could keep calling and see if we could find one that doesn't, but what we found in our survey was that it's not just a best practice, it is an absolutely universal practice. It's one that we've had here in the Form Uni for decades. It's one that seems to be universal across the board. So that as we were calling folks and getting that response, we felt that somewhat affirmed the practice. In terms of evaluating less lethal options, that's something that would take quite a bit of time to do. We procured this contract with the expectation that, like all of the previous ones that we've had and that have been approved by this board, that they would be with traditionally armed services. Looking at less lethal options, looking at time of day and other things is something that we absolutely can do. It's not something that in the course of a week we could give you any kind of substantive new information about. It's something that we would want to be very thoughtful about, that we would want to talk to industry experts, we'd want to talk with our employees about it as well. So I want to make sure that we try to be as responsive as we could, given that the time that we had. But we believe that the research we have done, the information that we found, really affirms the modest use. It is less than 20% of the security services that we do procure as armed is appropriate and is fully consistent with industry practice.
And I just want to add, I'm more convinced that there's a need for armed services, given the additional information that's come out. I think, for me, the big question is, and I know it's hard because this only comes to us, after the RFP is out and, once you've picked a bid and it comes to the board, and so we're really late in the game to even give input. A lot earlier I would have asked, can we do even less than we do today? Can we think about just nighttime? Can we think about other, as you said, less lethal deterrence? Because it is an additional $1 million in the contract. That being said, for the safety of our employees, it's absolutely important that we make sure that we're providing everything that we can to make employees safe. But just as we can hypothesize what would happen to our employees without guns, I can also hypothesize what would happen with guns, with more guns on the street than are necessary. And either way, it could be some tragic outcomes. And so I think what I wish we could have explored was kind of more options, on the table before it got to this point when it comes to the board. So I'll just say that, and there's nothing we can do about that at this point on. I agree a week is not enough time to explore all of these options. The last question I will just ask is, being that this system has been in place for many years, what is the protocol? When you talk about the ballpark, when you talk about Pala Market and Hyde and Beach, what is the training that you provide to our guards to make sure that we're keeping members of the public, safe as we can from a potential gunfight that might occur?
Yeah, absolutely. The purpose of the firearms is deterrence, and unfortunately it has worked to that effect to date, and primarily to keep our employees safe and to keep the general public safe. I'd like to ask our security director, Chris Grabakevich, to give you a specific answer to the question.
And I also just want to say, it's a hypothesis whether it's kept, we don't know what the impact of it is, if we would have been just and safe without it as well, because we don't have any data to showcase that for us.
Right. Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Without putting our employees or the general public at risk by delving too deeply into what we would consider security-sensitive information, what I do feel comfortable saying is that the armed security officers are in place specifically to protect lives and safety of people, not property. So we would not engage in the use of any degree of force, particularly lethal, in the interest of protecting money. It is lives only and this is a component of the training that is something that we emphasize very strongly, so that we make sure that precisely the worst case scenario that you've described is something that we consider all the time. The crowded area of Powell and Market, for example, is obviously the last place where we would want to unnecessarily engage in the discharge of a firearm for the potential to harm innocent people.
Thank you. Anything else, Supervisor Kim?
No. Thank
you. Okay. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to Supervisor Kim for the questions she's raised, and to our Director of Transportation. As I've noted before, my focus with respect to this contract has not been this issue of whether we should have armed or unarmed security. I think that based on everything we have heard, including, more importantly, the direct comments that I have received and we received from the employees, there is a need for armed security, and so I think that should be provided where appropriate. The concern that I have is more along the lines of the process that was followed here. As I noted before, I know that the city attorney has reviewed the legal requirements that currently exist, and I believe that those legal requirements have been met. But there is a question of legality, and then there's a question of, is it a good practice? And I believe that having the individual who is negotiating the contract be someone who until recently was employed by a company that is getting the award, I just don't think that's good public policy. It's not how I want my money as a taxpayer to be utilized. And so because of that, I will be voting against the contract. And again, it's not to impute any kind of bad motive on the part of the individuals involved. I think that I assume that these are ethical individuals, but I think that there is an issue of appearance. And so that's the problem. And that's why I will be voting against this. Let me note, though, something else that I think that I hope that we can collectively work on as a board and with the MTA. And that's a question of how do we ensure that we provide the best service in a fashion that is consistent with the values and principles that we hold at San Francisco. And I think that one thing that may be required to do that is to perhaps change the approach of how these contracts are structured, because to the extent that the focus is on the lowest bid in a contract, that may not necessarily be the best result, because the lowest bid could necessarily lead to the employees in a given contract being shortchanged in terms of salary, in terms of benefits. I think that we obviously want the taxpayers' money to be used efficiently, but we also don't want that efficiency to lead to any worker being deprived of a fair wage and the benefits that are due to them. So with that in mind, I would simply note that it might be helpful moving forward to figure out how these kinds of contracts can be structured moving forward in such a way that addresses that issue. And there may be, by the way, a need for some legal change. I know that the city law protects certain workers, rightly so. Our janitors are provided prevailing wage. There may be a need to explore the need to do that for our security officers. So I think it's something that we want to do, and I know that we have been working on that issue in the context of other contracts, and that the Director of Public Transportation is very committed to making that happen. So that's something that I hope we can work on moving forward. And with that, through the chair, I don't know, Mr. Riskin, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, if I may briefly, through the chair, I fully agree with you, and it was something that we recognized in this very procurement. In fact, initially, we did procure this under a low bid methodology, and for reasons that may or may not have been related to that, we had to reinitiate a second procurement. In doing so, we did switch to a cost and qualifications-based selection process for some of the reasons that you said. What we also did was sought and received Board of Supervisors approval to extend some of those kind of prevailing wage protections that currently exist in the admin code for certain categories of workers, such as custodial, as you said, to extend that to security personnel for the purposes of this contract. It wasn't a general extension of the admin code. It was specific to this contract, which allowed us to incorporate some provisions to protect the workers, particularly in terms of retention and in terms of prevailing wage. So it is something that I think we're able to do successfully with this contract, and would be happy to work with you and appreciate the offer on contracts going forward where we might, again, need Board of Supervisors support in order to incorporate that into future competitive solicitations.
Thank you very much for that. And I would simply end by saying that I don't know what's going to happen with this contract, but my view is that the right result would be for this proposal to be rejected, for the existing contract with Cyprus to be extended so that there is a renewed process that addresses some of the concerns that have been raised about this process. But again, thanks to everyone involved, and thank you to the workers especially who've come out to provide their comments.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos. Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you very much, Madam President. First of all, I want to thank the MTA also for answering the questions from last week, and I'm glad to hear that, from what I've heard, that some of my colleagues have come around to understanding that it doesn't make sense to turn our fare collectors into sitting ducks who are going to be wandering around often late at night collecting large amounts of money with basically no security other than someone to chaperone them around. And as much as we would all like to see guns disappear from as much of our planet as possible, that unfortunately victimization does happen, and people whose job it is to collect and carry around large sums of money need to be protected. It is a public safety issue. It's a worker safety issue. I think the various arguments that we've heard against this contract have all been, in my view, addressed. The MTA is not some sort of aberration in using armed guards to protect employees who are collecting sums of cash. We see that all of these other major transit agencies are doing exactly the same thing. MTA is simply doing what appears to be very well established best practice. It is not the case that MTA is sort of willy-nilly arming security personnel, since, as Mr. Riskin noted, 80% of security personnel do not carry arms. It is only those guards for whom it makes sense, for whom, as a matter of worker safety, they need to carry arms, that do so, and 80% do not. That we do not want these guards engaging in some sort of gunfight on the streets, and in fact that hasn't happened. I think that is an unfounded fear. This is a deterrent so that people who might be thinking about robbing these San Francisco employees know that they are protected, and that hopefully they'll be less likely to do so. And in fact, the fact that we have not had a problem with robberies, I think in my mind shows that the deterrent has worked. We heard before that there was some sort of inadequate training, and we now see from the MTA that these security personnel received 70 hours, if I add up the numbers correctly, 70 hours of training, including significant training on use of force, and in addition they have to every 6 months take an additional 16 hours of training at the firing range and requalify at the firing range every 6 months. And in terms of the issues around the process, as we've heard, the city attorney has determined that there was no ethics violation. So someone can be of the view that the process should be different or that the law should be different, and that's a public policy discussion that is totally appropriate to have. But to reject a contract for some sort of ethical problem when it's been determined that there was no ethics violation, that doesn't make sense to me. No process is perfect, no contract is perfect, but this is an existing contract that has worked well for the agency, as shown by the fact that we haven't had some sort of epidemic of robberies. It's worked well, it's protected these workers, it's kept them safe, it's allowed them to do their jobs in a safe environment, and we should approve this contract.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. Supervisor Marr.
Thank you. I appreciate the concerns raised by Supervisor Kim and Campos. And generally, my philosophy is also not increasing guns among public employees and reducing it wherever possible in creative ways so that their jobs are protected and that they fulfill their functions. But on this one, I'm convinced especially by testimony from many of the guards themselves and SEIU and others, that The armed protection for the 18 of the security guards, the 20% is a necessity. And I'll just read kind of one of the quotes from one of the security workers from the MTA. She says that she and her coworkers are really concerned about this. The heading is that she wrote to many of us is armed security is a must. And I think she's talking about the narrow number of people that need this defense. She says if the contract is eliminated by April 30th at midnight, my coworkers and I will be defenseless against robbery attempts. Without armed guards, the likelihood of violent occurrences could increase, putting SFMTA employees and the community at risk. I'm really appreciative that we've heard from a number of the staff from the MTA about this issue, but also Mr. Riskin has answered every single question, not only for the Budget Committee and following up with what the budget and legislative analysts gave us as well, but I'm just really appreciative of all the training that Supervisor Wiener just went through, including additional hours of training at the firing range for those narrow number of officers. So it's ensuring that their training is continuing even after the initial training. And on this Cyprus contract, I'm convinced that it's the right thing to do. I think the question of whether armed guards in public institutions should be continued is a broader question that hopefully we'll address at some other time. But for this contract, I'm supportive, and I really appreciate the comments from the workers themselves as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a couple questions for the Director of Security. Thank you. Excuse my back. In the letter that Director Riskin drafted and sent to us, it talks about, there's a section that talks about the training of armed security guards, and then you make a reference that the armed security guards receive training that is extensive and beyond the minimum requirement that the state puts out. I'm curious to know, what is that minimum requirement that the state puts out?
First, Madam President, I apologize. Chris Garbarkevich, Director of Security Investigations and Enforcement at MTA. Forgot that last time. The state requires 8 hours of classroom training and 6 hours of training at a firing range. That's followed by a test.
Is that a written exam or assurance?
It's both, ma'am. It's a written exam, and they have to pass a firing test.
My question is to Director Riskin now. Thank you very much. Director, has there been any internal policy changes to ensure that that the potential of I guess the process out of which the contract was negotiated, the discrepancy, whether it was a fair process? Is there an internal policy that's been put in place to ensure that this doesn't happen again? Even though the city attorney found that there is no violation, it's just doesn't quite pass the smell test.
Well, I guess what I would say is that the city attorney did, at our request, to investigate and found that there was nothing we did that was not compliant with the relevant laws. I think to the extent that the board feels that the law, which requires, I believe it's a 12-month waiting period for somebody transitioning from the private sector to the public sector to be able to have dealings with their former private sector employee, to the extent that the board feels that 12 months is not long enough, I think, as somebody said, that would be a good debate to have and potentially change the ethics code accordingly. I think as a result of recognizing that there are optics associated with this, even though the city attorney has confirmed what we believe to be the case, that the process was fully legitimate, I think it's something that we would definitely consider as we're thinking about who's going to be involved in a procurement going forward. We always check to make sure that we're within the law. To the extent that this procurement has raised issues, we might consider whether we want to do something above and beyond the law until such point in time when the Board of Supervisors might want to change that law. But our practices are cognizant of the law, have followed the law, and in this case, as in all others, that I'm aware.
Thank you. Another question: has your department ever considered? Has your department ever considered arming guards, but with a non-lethal weapon?
It's not something that, at least in my time, that we've looked at. I think as a result of this conversation, it's something we'd be happy to explore. We did confirm that using armed security to protect the folks who collect revenue is an absolute industry standard. So I think we would have to think hard about being willing to deviate from that standard, but it's absolutely something that we could look into. At the end of the day, we're going to defer to our security experts, want to work with our employees on any potential changes that we make, but it's something that we can look into.
So the reason why I'm a little uncomfortable with this item is that I understand that there is an industry standard to arm guards, but we're all human beings and we're all subject to make mistakes. And when an armed guard makes a mistake, it has costs and can cost a person their life. And I don't think that we are in a position to take this gamble. And I don't think that we're in a position to take the safety of the workers and their concerns and a desire to see some level of armed security. I would very much like to see a proposal that takes into consideration arming security guards, but with a non-lethal weapon. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, President Breed. Colleagues, I'll just say to 2 points. First of all, I appreciate Supervisor Campos' your comments about the process here. It does seem strange. I will say this contract was up before us at Budget Committee in 2014 and there were only 2 bidders, and the other bidder was the one that had won the contract for the first time, and we actually voted on them, or were prepared to vote on them and approve it. And so all of this, what kind of lately has been discussed, came to light after we actually sent it through Budget Committee, and I do share your concerns. So I will, going forward, if there's ways to look at amending our laws so that we make sure we don't even have these potential for optics, I think it's well worth our while doing it as a Board of Supervisors, and would be happy to work together on that. In terms of the conversation around armed guards, I appreciate that conversation. From my perspective, look, I wish we could do everything, to eliminate the use of armed weapons in every facet of our city life. I think the reality is, from my perspective, after listening to certainly labor, but also MTA staff, at times there is a reason for this. And certainly carrying currency late at night, from my perspective, that is something that is a job that is incredibly risky. And one could, again, there is no data to support that, of course, but there's an argument to be made that the reason we haven't had incidents is because they are armed. And we could debate that round and round, but I think from my perspective, I would err on the side of caution and allowing, especially because there have not been any serious incidents, and all the training outlines that has been outlined earlier, to continue to allow that. So I will be voting in favor of this today, but again, in terms of working on future process-related issues and contracting, be happy to work together on those issues.
Thank you. Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you. I will be voting against the contract for armed services, and but I do appreciate the explanation I got. I saw it late last night from Director Riskin, and I can understand the need. Or I can stand why they would feel that there's a need. My concern, I'm voting no, but I do vote no, saying that if there ever was a change where armed services were dropped from security services, but security services continue, security workers keep their jobs, and they actually get paid the same amount of money they got for carrying arms in the new job where they're not carrying arms. That to me is really important, that the workers do not see any loss in take-home pay. So just want to put that out there, that my no vote includes that comment.
Thank you, Supervisor Avalos. Supervisor Kim.
I just wanted to say I do appreciate all the answers and the response from SFMTA. I just want to concur with Supervisor Avalos and Cohen. I'm still not convinced. I'm not saying that I am against it 100%. I actually could see how it is useful and how armed services is a deterrent. I just don't feel like I had all the answers that I need to confidently support the contract moving forward today. I do think it's important to hold us accountable in general for our taxpayer dollars to make sure that we are spending doing it the best that we can and ensuring that everyone is as safe as possible doing that. I'm confident moving forward that we'll be able to have this discussion moving into the future. But I do think within a week's time, I think SFMTA did, respond as best as they could to all of these questions. I just don't think industry standard means that it's necessary or that it makes us safer. But I'm not saying, that it doesn't make us safer either. I just wish that we had more options in terms of non-lethal options and that we explored, daytime versus nighttime. I get the nighttime need, actually. I mean, that off the bat I understood immediately. I just, wish we had more time to explore less guns on the street and other non-lethal options. We weren't able to do that in this time. I just want to say I appreciate that they get more training than was initially presented to us last week, but I do think a firing range is very different from a moving target in a very busy city, and so I would like to understand that a little bit more as we move forward. But I certainly think safety is the top issue for our employees. I mean, if we're really going to look at safety, then I think we have to look at our bus drivers, because they're the ones that actually, we have a history where there's demonstration of attacks and assaults on our bus drivers. We haven't seen it yet with our fare collectors. So this is where where the questions come up. If our goal is really utmost safety for our workers, and what are we doing with bus drivers where we do have demonstrable history of assaults that happen? And I don't want that to happen to any of our bus drivers. So anyway, I think this is an ongoing dialogue. I won't be able to support the contract today, but I do think that there's a very good dialogue that happened. I am appreciative that this will continue.
Okay, seeing no other names on the roster, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On item 19, Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
No.
Campos, no. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
No.
Cohen, no. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, no. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Wiener, Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
No.
Avalos, no. There are 7 ayes and 4 noes, with Supervisors Campos, Cohen, Kim, and Avalos with the dissent.
This resolution is adopted. Madam Clerk, can you call the next item?
Item 20 is a resolution to adopt the city's 5-year financial plan for fiscal years 2015-16 through 2019-20.
Madam Clerk, can you call the roll on this item, please?
On item 20, Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye.
President Breed, could I make a comment?
Oh, sorry about that. Take it back. Supervisor Marr. Sorry, I missed your name on the roster.
That's okay. This is on the financial plan. Actually, I'm sorry. I wanted to speak on item 21. Sorry about that.
Okay. Can you call the roll, please, Madam Clerk?
On item 20, Madam President?
Yes.
Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. There are 11 ayes.
This resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 21 is a resolution to adopt the city's 5-year information and communication technology plan for fiscal years 2016 through 2020.
Supervisor Marr.
Thank you. I first wanted to thank our city's Chief Information Officer, Miguel Gamino, and the Kuwait Committee for the great presentations that they've given and their vision for a 5-year information and communications technology plan. I wanted to also acknowledge the great work of our Budget and Legislative Analyst Office that last week revealed a major report showing the huge gaping and potentially widening digital divide that exists within our city, especially for low-income neighborhoods, seniors, the homework gap for many low-income kids in the home that are not a part of the high-speed internet revolution that's sweeping across this world. I think some important concerns that I have about our 5-year plan were raised at the Budget and Finance Committee recently as we heard Fred Brousseau talk about the findings of the report from the budget analysts. I wanted to say that well over 100,000 San Franciscans do not have internet access, and the FCC has recently upped the definition of what high speed to the home access is, and I think it's way more than 100,000 people given the numbers from a survey done by the Comptroller's Office. And 50,000 people in San Francisco still use some might call it archaic dial-up connections as well, which is really, really slow, that you can't really access audio or visual like many others can. The New York Times yesterday editorialized and reiterated what our budget analysts found in the study that was done, that local governments really must play a critical role in increasing broadband so that nobody is left behind, especially low-income communities. I wanted to thank Supervisor or Assemblyman Amiano in 2007 and a task force for digital inclusion that advocated not only for not leaving anybody behind in the digital highway, but also for the potential of a municipal fiber network like Chattanooga, Tennessee, and 150 other jurisdictions around this country. I think the 5-year technology plan is really a good vision, but it's not adequately addressing digital inclusion that's really needed to include people from communities and that we bridge the digital divide as strongly as we can in our city and leave nobody behind. I look forward to working with Mr. Gamino and our COIT committee and other community stakeholders in ensuring that the city approaches our digital divide and struggles for digital inclusion as strongly as we can. I think a divide that requires creative and responsive solutions should support a strategy for digital inclusion in our city and an action plan as well, like we had in 2007 and a few years ago. So I look forward to coordinating my efforts with Supervisor Mark Farrell, who's also been active in this, looking at financing for expanding our city's broadband network. And to facilitate these goals, I've directed the city attorney to form a digital inclusion task force or draft legislation so that we can ensure that community members from senior organizations to low-income communities and immigrant groups can have a say as our city develops our information and technology plan for the future.
Thank you, Supervisor Marr. Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'll be supporting this today, but there are two items I want to raise. And in expanding access to broadband, a really critical component is that the city actually have the infrastructure in place to do that. And I'll be honest that I think the city is falling behind, and I don't think our city government has done what it needs to do. So we are in the process in San Francisco of digging up almost every city street in the city. We are accelerating our road resurfacing, we're replacing our sewer system, our water mains. PG&E is doing an enormous amount of natural gas line work. We're doing all of this, and our city departments are not laying conduit in the street before they close it back up to be able to expand our existing municipal fiber network. I've never understood why this isn't happening. I hear excuses, but it's not rocket science, and it should have been happening for many, many years. Last year, then Supervisor David Chu authored legislation that I co-sponsored and that we passed unanimously to require that our city departments, with some exceptions, lay conduit as they're opening and closing streets. We learned at the Budget Committee that despite the fact that that law has been on the books for, I believe, at least 6 months, if not more, maybe 8 months, not 1 inch of conduit has been laid. Not 1 inch of conduit has been laid. DT has been formulating protocols. I don't know, to me, those protocols don't need to be complicated. It's not rocket science. The protocols apparently are going to be done next month, and then they will go into departmental review. Well, we've all seen that movie before. I have no idea how long that's going to take. I could see it taking years if other examples are any indication. And there will be objection after objection from departments. And meanwhile, we'll be repaving miles and miles and miles of road that we could have been laying conduit in. So I've asked the city attorney to draft legislation to basically remove all departmental discretion over laying conduit and to amend, I believe it would be the excavation code, to mandate that if you're digging up a street, you shall lay conduit. I'm hoping that we don't even have to introduce that legislation. I'm hoping that our departments can all work together and move this forward so we start laying conduit now. Not in a year, not in 5 years, not one block per year, but actually start getting it done. We are seeing an enormous missed opportunity, and we need to fix this. I also want to say that we are expanding free Wi-Fi access in public spaces. I don't think it's where it needs to be. The Wi-Fi access, particularly along Market Street, is still very bad. And so if we're going to be trying to give people access, we have to have the infrastructure that actually supports that access. I will be supporting this today, but I think these are significant infrastructure challenges that the city has not adequately addressed.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you. I don't want to belabor the point, but I do think that one of the things that struck me about the issue of the digital divide that exists is the timidity with which the city is addressing that issue. And I want to thank Supervisor Marr for raising the issues he's raised, and I know that there's going to be work that's going to be done in the near future on that issue. I know that Supervisor Farrell has actually done work around this as well, and I think that what Supervisor Wiener noted is also very important. So I think that's progress. But you know what struck me and has struck me about this is that we tout ourselves as being a city that is, technology driven, and yet when it comes to the digital divide, we are lagging behind many cities. And it's interesting because San Francisco over the last few years has rolled out the red carpet for these tech corporate giants, and I wonder where are they in this picture? The Tech Chamber of Commerce as if city touts, all the things it's done for San Francisco. Well, what has it done to close the digital divide? I have yet to hear anything about what they've done on this issue, and the fact that I haven't heard anything tells me that they probably have done very little. Mr. Conway is not shy to talk about all the things he does. So I think that it has to be a two-way street. I think the city has to do more, but I also think that these corporate partners should do more as well. We certainly have gone out of our way to provide financial benefits to a lot of these companies, a lot of these corporations, and yet it doesn't seem that we're really getting much. And certainly in this area, San Francisco, the heart of Silicon Valley, is lagging behind places like Chattanooga, where they have made investments that far outpace anything that we're doing here.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos. Supervisor Christensen.
I just wanted to point out that if we'd said yes to Google 10 years ago, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Thank you, Supervisor Christensen. Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you call the next item, please?
Item 22 is a resolution to adopt the city's 10-year capital expenditure plan for fiscal years 2016 through 2025.
Thank you. Seeing no names. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And let me say that I will be supporting this item, but I want to be very clear that and there's nothing in the document that's before us that actually addresses this issue, but I just don't want any ambiguity in the record that I think that there's still many questions to be answered about one specific item within the capital plan, and that's whether or not to replace county jails 3 and 4 in the Hall of Justice. I think that there is strong evidence against the need for a new jail. And given the decrease in the jail population and the effectiveness of community-based interventions like behavioral court, pretrial diversion, and other alternatives to incarceration. And I hope that it's clear that by supporting this capital plan, it doesn't mean that we are committing ourselves to the rebuild of a new jail. I know that Supervisor Kim has been doing a lot of work on this issue, and look forward to the hearing that she will be holding that I'm co-sponsoring on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos, and I agree with you as well. Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you. And along the same lines, I'm voting in favor of the capital plan today as a guideline, but not as a mandate, not setting in stone what is in here. I think it provides a general direction for us to go. I'm specifically, I have concerns about the jail, probably other projects as well. I'm also looking at the rollout of our GO bonds that we have that are mentioned in the capital plan and the relation to the proposed housing bond that is looking to go to the November ballot. And I think there's a room for a larger bond that I want to consider, and I don't think that's necessarily considered in the capital plan, but I think it's one that we should continue to consider as we move closer to the end of June.
Thank you, Supervisor Avalos. Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you. Just as we all, as I did in the last item, criticized some of our city agencies for slow progress, I think we also need to acknowledge the positive. And I just want to say, just as a reminder of what incredible progress we made having a 10-year capital plan. And if we think back to what it was like before we had the capital plan, it's just really night and day. And the fact that we now have this methodical catalog of all of the city's capital needs with a plan for a path forward for meeting those needs is just tremendous. That we're actually planning bonds years in advance, that it's done according to a schedule, that under this plan we've seen the completion of our library renovations, more and more park renovations, roads, transportation, health, and so on and so forth. So I really want to commend the Capital Planning Committee and its staff and all the departments who have helped make this successful. I also want to particularly thank both the PUC, the Mayor's Office, and the Capital Planning Committee for taking to heart the dialogue that we had around streetlights. Streetlights are now moving into the plan. The PUC has dramatically increased what it invests in our streetlight system, which has had so many challenges, and I really want to give a heartfelt thank you to everyone who made that possible. And as I mentioned, that committee, we also always have to look at the horizon, and our water crisis really, I think, compels us to be looking aggressively at water reuse, water recycling infrastructure, and how that plays into our park system, and watering and cleaning our parks, plazas, and public spaces, as well as our city buildings. And so I hope that the Capital Planning Committee will take a hard look at how we move forward much more aggressively towards all sorts of water reuse in San Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you. I also want to commend the Capital Plan Committee. It's when you look at the overall plan for the 10 years and it gets readjusted every so often, I'm glad we're doing this, especially with the bond measures, that we're doing this logically and not trying to fight over things every single year. I know they couldn't really take into consideration too much for the school districts, school bonds, but it seems like, at least because of our good relationship between the city and the school district, that there are discussions. Maybe one of these days we could incorporate all that. For me, I will be supporting this. It's a good plan. It's basically gives us some guidance in terms of where we want to go from here in the next few years. Not everything in there will be done, I suppose, but at least it gives us guidance. And one of the things that we need to have a discussion on, I agree with several of my colleagues in regards to the jails. We've had discussions on this already, and there's been discussions of where it started and the reduction of how many beds it needs and so forth. I think when we're ready to tackle it once and for all, we need to have, as a board, a thorough discussion around what the needs are. Is this going to improve the conditions for those that need to be here in San Francisco jailed, compared to what the conditions are, what I've seen down in San Bruno. So, but I'll be supporting this.
Thank you. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly just share a little bit about the discussion that we had in Budget Committee on this item. Of course, I do want to applaud our city for actually embarking upon a 10-year capital plan for many years, and we are at the end of our first 10-year cycle. In terms of the specific conversations regarding, again, specific proposals such as the jail, I did mention that in the past we have actually, despite passing a capital plan, we have actually changed and swapped out certain projects that we intended to have. So, for example, we had initially wanted a new ACC, Animal Care Control Building, in the past. We are now pairing that up with a public health bond. We cycled in a transportation bond last year. We are now newly adding in a housing bond, and we hope to eventually see whether we can cycle a housing bond regularly through our capital plan going forward. And so I think that the plan really identifies needs, and there's still room to make changes. And I think it's really good that Supervisor Kim is holding a specific hearing on the jail and the specifics of that. We also heard that there will be further analysis done in terms of the number of beds that have been proposed, potentially even changing what that they have currently proposed as part of this. So I do feel comfortable approving the plan, given that overall it's not just about that one project, the jail, but there's so many other things that we've identified needs for.
Thank you, colleagues. I appreciate all of your comments, and as the representative of the board on the Capital Planning Committee, I too have brought the board's voice to this committee. And again, I want to reiterate that this is just a plan. There's still a process in place. I too have concerns about the jail and a few other things in the project, but I think overall having a roadmap makes a huge difference when we're making decisions about how we protect our public assets in the future and how we make decisions about building things that we need in order to move us forward as a city. With that, colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call, without objection? The resolution is adopted unanimously. And at this time, we are going to it's past 2:30, and we will have two 2:30 commendations. And so I want to start with Supervisor Farrow, who has a commendation today, followed by Supervisor Eric Marr.
Thank you, Madam President. So, colleagues, today I have the great pleasure to honor a gentleman that many of us have worked with in the past, to recognize his amazing contributions to our city, our state, and our country through his research and his work and advocacy for public health. So I would like to ask Dr. John Mott to come up to the podium. Colleagues, Dr. Mott, just to give you a bit of his background, it's actually kind of exhausting how decorated he is. He's a graduate of Harvard Medical School, been in practice for over 21 years. He completed his residency at UCSF and a fellowship in health policy at the UCSF Institute of Health Policy Studies. Dr. Ma also served our country, and he joined the U.S. Army Medical Corps, and thank you for your service, where he served for 9 years and left after being awarded the rank of captain. His work has led to a series of publications in the New England Journal of Medicine, JAMA, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, among other things, and was recognized with the Perlman Award for Medical Journalism from the San Francisco Medical Society. His current research focuses on reducing the impact of smoking on surgical outcomes. Dr. Ma is currently an assistant professor of surgery and associate director of surgery clerkship for UCSF, is in clinical practice in Marin General, and serves as a chair of the University of California Office of the President for Tobacco-Related Disease Research Program Scientific Advisory Committee. He was nominated by the American Heart Association to represent them at the Tobacco-Related Disease Research Program, where he served as chair. He is a member of the American Heart Association's Board of Directors, as well as the San Francisco Medical Society. He's also immediate past president of the Northern California chapter of the American College of Surgeons. Quite an amazing long list. In particular, I have the opportunity, I know many of us have worked with Dr. Ma in the past, but I want to recognize him today in particular as we're voting on legislation that I authored, but a number of my colleagues have co-sponsored regarding chewing tobacco. I wanted to recognize you, certainly on this occasion today, but for all of your incredible hard work. So thank you on behalf of all of San Francisco and all of our residents for all of your hard work in the area of health. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
President Breed and members of the Board of Supervisors, good afternoon. I'd like to thank Supervisor Farrell for this wonderful recognition, which is an honor to be shared with our city and statewide tobacco control leaders and their decades-long efforts. I'm pleased to be here today as a member of the Board of Directors of both the American Heart Association and the San Francisco Medical Society, which have both endorsed this important legislation to end the use of smokeless tobacco at AT&T Ballpark and on public athletic fields across the great city of San Francisco. I applaud the leadership and vision of Supervisor Farrell and his 6 co-authors, Supervisors Christensen, Tang, Cohen, Marr, Weiner, and Avalos, to introduce this important legislation to protect the health of our baseball heroes and their young fans. I'd like to thank in advance each of you who will be voting aye shortly. Our great city has a very long tradition of pioneering tobacco control legislation that becomes a model for the rest of the nation, such as clean indoor air laws, prohibiting the sales of tobacco products in pharmacies, ending tobacco advertising on city property, and most recently, the electronic cigarette regulation championed by Supervisor Eric Marr. I believe that the action that you will take today about smokeless tobacco epitomizes the great things that government can achieve. In this particular instance, in assisting Major League Baseball and the Players Union to achieve their own self-stated important public health goal. This will have worldwide and national significance. I look forward to Mayor Lee following your visionary lead and signing this landmark bill into law shortly, which will be a key win for the wonderful city of San Francisco. Thank you.
Yes.
Congratulations, Dr. Ma. Next, we have up Supervisor Eric Marr.
Thank you. I did also want to give a shout out to Dr. John Ma. When we had our Choose Health SF campaign that was led by Supervisor Cohen, Weiner, Avalos, and I, as we honored people, he was a true champion for children's health and to address the diabetes epidemic here in San Francisco, but throughout the country as well. It's my honor on the day before Earth Day to honor 3 amazing organizers and activists from San Francisco Surfrider Foundation. And I'd like to ask if the chair, Brian Dow, could come forward, and the campaign co-chairs for RAP, which is called Rise Above Plastic, Eva Holman and Shannon Waters, could come forward. I wanted to say that the San Francisco Surfrider Foundation and the various campaigns are amazing. It's a grassroots force in San Francisco, but also throughout the country, to create stewards for the environment, to protect the ocean, and to create a more sustainable future. But I was struck in going to their meetings on how fun and engaging they are, how creativity and resourcefulness are really encouraged, and it's just a great culture of an organization that's trying to help not only the West Side, the Sunset, and the Richmond, but throughout the city and protect our oceans and the environment. Rise Above Plastic is a Surfrider Foundation national campaign with the aim of reducing plastic pollution worldwide through creative community solutions. I like how they involve kids and communities and parents to really approach small businesses to get them to be more sustainable and to look at plastic straws as one of the polluting impacts on the ocean and our communities. The Rise Above Plastic campaign in San Francisco is connected with others, but I know San Francisco is like the model campaign chapter. Locally, the RAP campaign is supported by the San Francisco Board of Supervisors policies like our plastic bag ban. Thanks so much to Sheriff Ross Mirakarimi and others for championing that. And our plastic water bottle bans. Thank you to former Mayor Newsom, but also David Chu and I kind of did a lot of the work on some of the plastic bottle work, but especially Corporate Accountability International and many community-based organizations, including SF Surfrider Foundation, to those initiatives connected with the new RAP campaign and others, I think, help San Francisco get out in front globally to reduce plastic waste that washes up on our beaches and shores and in the 5 gyres kind of areas of the world as well. Last Sunday, I was also really honored to be there with 400 volunteers on Ocean Beach to clean up after some of the bonfires had ended, but just people celebrate. But I'll just say Surfrider Foundation has been doing heroic work cleaning up Ocean Beach over and over again every year. And I'm impressed by their ability to mobilize so many people and to do it in such a fun way as well. But I was also shocked and horrified by how many straws, cigarette butts, little plastic stuff that I could pick up in a short amount of time like many others did, and that basically tons and pounds of garbage left on the ocean beach, and how many people that you mobilize to really clean it up. We need to do so much more, but we also need a culture of leave no trace and protecting the environment that is so important that Surfrider Foundation promotes in its campaigns. I also wanted to say that San Francisco's Rise Above Plastic program continues to look for ways to reduce plastic pollution, and they've turned their attention to plastic straws, a common item picked up at the Surfrider Beach cleanups. You can make a difference by urging businesses in your neighborhoods to only give straws by request or to switch to more sustainable options like straws made of materials that are not plastic. Surfrider Foundation and the Rise Above Plastics work is critical. It's grassroots campaigns involving regular people that really help us build awareness to change the culture in our society, but also to reduce the impact on the environment that we depend on to live and for the future generations. Please join me in honoring our Earth Day honorees, Brian Dow, Eva Holman, and Shannon Waters from the Surfrider Foundation.
Thank you very much. We are really honored to be here. Thank you, Supervisor Marr, and to all the supervisors here. As Supervisor Marr mentioned, we are a group of volunteers, and so we come from a variety of different backgrounds, and we all care about the ocean for a variety of different reasons. Some of us are surfers, and some of us just really want to ensure that there are clean oceans and beaches. Me personally, one of the first reasons I got involved was one of the first times I went surfing. Found lots of different trash at the surf spot that I was at, and so I was tucking it into my wetsuit, and I'll throw that away later. So I tuck it into my sleeve, and when I got out of the water, I stepped down and there was a diaper floating there in the water next to me, and it was I was surfing at the end of a storm drain outlet, so. A lot of that had just washed off the streets. And so we do try to do a lot of education upstream to try to get people to understand the consequences when you litter on the street, or even if something doesn't get put into a trash can correctly, then it can end up in the ocean and really end up affecting all of us. And we should all have access to clean oceans and clean beaches. So thank you so much. I'm going to see if my colleagues here want to say a word.
I'm just going to be really quick and invite you all to join us for a beach cleanup. It really changes your perspective, and just going out there one time can change what you buy, what you purchase for your own home, and what you use for your kids.
And I also want to thank the Board of Supervisors. One thing I'd like to remind everyone is that this kind of issue isn't limited just to Western neighborhoods. Everything from the middle of America to right here, we'll run off into the ocean. It doesn't matter where we are, and being a city that's surrounded on three sides by the ocean, I think it hits us very close to home. So moving forward, issues like these will keep cropping up, and we are glad and more than happy to help tackle them along with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you for your work in protecting the environment, and congratulations. Madam Clerk, can we go back to our agenda? We are now at item number 23.
Item 23 is an ordinance to appropriate approximately $6.4 million of developer contributions and reimbursements to Public Works in fiscal year 2014-15 for necessary repairs and seismic improvements to prepare for a major earthquake or natural disaster by placing approximately $2.3 million of Series Earthquake Safety and Emergency Response General Obligation bond proceeds on Budget and Finance Committee reserve.
Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On item 23, Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos. Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. There are 11 ayes.
This ordinance is passed unanimously on the first reading. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 24?
Item 24 is a resolution to authorize the Department of Technology to enter into the Eighth Amendment of the citywide 800 megahertz radio system project agreement between the city and Motorola to increase the contract amount to approximately $30.4 million for the remaining term through September 21st, 2017.
Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Item number 25.
Item 25, resolution to approve modifications to separate lease and use agreements, one with Air France and Cathay Pacific Airways Limited and the city for changes in demised premises with an estimated minimum combined rent of approximately $29.7 million for the remainder of the lease terms, expiring June 30th, 2021.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Item number 26.
Item 26 is a resolution to approve a lease and use agreement between Delta Airlines and the city for changes in the demised premises with an estimated minimum rent of approximately $74 million for the remainder of the lease term expiring June 30th, 2021.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 27, resolution to authorize the General Manager of the Public Utilities Commission to execute Amendment Number 5 to an agreement for the new Irvington Tunnel Project engineering services with URS Corporation in order to allow URS Corporation to continue as design engineer of record for the construction of the tunnel and increasing the agreement amount by $1 million for an approximate total amount not to exceed $15.9 million.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 28 is a resolution to retroactively authorize the Recreation and Park Department to accept and expend an approximate $850,000 grant from the California Natural Resources Agency for urban greening for sustainable communities for the Mansell Corridor in McLaren Park.
Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you, President Breed. Colleagues, I just wanted to underscore these funds and the projects that are happening on Mansell over the next couple of years. Mansell runs right through McLaren Park, and it ties together District 9, District 10, and District 11. It could be a major throughway for cars coming from the east to the western part of San Francisco. But what's really significant is that McLaren Park has seen tremendous changes over the past few years. A lot of it has really been triggered by great volunteerism of people all around the park. That attention has really led to major improvements. And the major one that we're going to see coming forward is this corridor along Mansell. Right now, there are about 4 lanes and parts of it that cruise along either side of a divider on Mansell. They'll be reduced down to 2 lanes on one lane on either side, but a bike path as well as some pedestrian pathways as well. A lot of greening and permeable surfaces, and that corridor, once it's done, will be a tremendous thing that will link both sides of the park together, and not just the neighborhoods all around, but the people who are actually using the park, from dog walkers to hikers, people who just want to enjoy the beauty that's all around there. And if you haven't been to McLaren Park recently, I would check it out. It's a really great place to really enjoy what is very scenic and often very quiet part of San Francisco. So I want to put a plug in for the park, and I want to thank all the different entities that have worked to help make this happen, from Rec and Park and DPW. There are funding sources that come from OBAG, from the Transportation Authority, Prop AA, lots of different sources. So it's going to be really great to see, and come now and come later and come often to McLaren Park.
Thank you, Supervisor Avalos. Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you call the next item, please?
Item 29 is a resolution to retroactively authorize the Department of Children, Youth, and their families to accept and expend an approximate $1 million grant from the U.S. Department of Justice for a multidisciplinary partnership to reduce recidivism for disconnected transitional age youth and providing a framework for preventing the school-to-prison pipeline, March 1st through December 31st, 2015.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 30 is an ordinance to amend the Transportation, Police, Administrative, and Business and Tax Regulations Code for regulation and enforcement of motor vehicles for hire.
Same House, same call. Without objection, this ordinance is passed on the first reading unanimously. Item number 31.
Item 31, ordinance to amend the Administrative Code to modify the rental payment differential and to regulate relocation payments to evicted tenants.
Supervisor Campos.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Just briefly, this revised ordinance addresses some of the concerns that have been raised in federal court. And specifically, it sets a cap on the amount of relocation payments that are made, and it also provides specificity to the controller in terms of the formula that is used to determine the amount that is paid. So with that, I respectfully ask for your support. Thank you.
Okay, not seeing any other names on the roster. Colleagues, can we take this item, same House, same call? Without objection, this ordinance is passed unanimously on the first reading. Item number 32.
Item 32, resolution to authorize the nomination of 5 new priority conservation areas: the Palouse-Phelps Natural Area, the Bayview Hill Natural Area, the Green Connections McLaren Park Pivot, the Crosstown Trail connecting Twin Peaks Bioregion Glen Canyon, and the San Francisco Bay Area Water Trail.
Supervisor Marr.
Thank you, colleagues. I wanted to thank Supervisor Cohen for joining me as co-sponsors on this important resolution. In 2007, there were 4 priority conservation areas in San Francisco, or PCAs, submitted to the Association of Bay Area Governments that I sit on with, I believe, Supervisor Christensen and Kim. These green areas of our city are a natural oasis for San Francisco, and they need to be protected and maintained. However, the areas that were nominated were moved forward with minimal input from the city and our agencies. So in November of last year, we authorized the Planning Department to nullify these proposed PCAs and conduct a more comprehensive study on the Priority Conservation Area Program and to determine what San Francisco's new PCAs would be. So beginning in January this year, the Planning Department, Department of the Environment, the Rec and Park Department, as well as nonprofits like the Greenbelt Alliance and the California Native Plant Society began their work. And the goal was to bring a science-based approach from the Department of the Environment, Greenbelt Alliance, with a hands-on and observational work from the California Native Plant Society to go along with the policy support found in the Planning Department and Rec and Parks work. I think the new areas that are proposed here incorporate all of the original ideas while expanding their scope to be more inclusive of the surrounding natural areas while also capturing some entirely new areas in our city. Palouse-Phelps Natural Area is unchanged. The Bayview Hill Natural Area is unchanged except for the name. The Green Connections McLaren Park Pivot is a brand new area in the southeast part of our city. And the Crosstown Trail connecting Twin Peaks Bioregion Glen Canyon, a.k.a. Twin Peaks Bioregion, is a new area, but it incorporates the previous Aqua Vista, Twin Peaks, and Sutro Tower area at the top heights of our city. For this, I urge your support along with Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you, Supervisor Marr. Colleagues, can we take this item, same House, same call? Without objection, this ordinance is passed unanimously on the first reading. Madam Clerk, can you call the next item?
Item 33, ordinance to amend the Administrative Code to establish the membership of the Our Children's, Our Families Council and to implement its structure and functions.
Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, President Bree. Colleagues, as you know, while our city has remarkable resources for children, youth, and families, San Francisco still has the lowest percentage of children of any major city in the United States. We can all agree that this needs to be changed. Our Children, Our Families Council was established by voters through the passage of Proposition C last November. The council, with the mayor and the superintendent of schools as co-chairs, will bring together department heads, district heads, and community members to develop a strategic plan on how we will retain families in San Francisco and hopefully attract more families in our cities. Over the past several months, my office worked closely with the mayor's office, the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, the San Francisco Unified School District, and a broad group of community members to create the initial structure for this council. The council will not only create a strategic plan, but also be tasked with coordinating services to maximize support for children, youth, and families in San Francisco. I am also excited that the council will be addressing the broader systemic issues that affect families, such as affordable family housing, jobs, workforce development, and accessible transit. We have so much to lose when families leave the city. Families of all backgrounds add to the city's unique character, culture, diversity, and vibrancy. So we need to act now to help shape the future generations of our city. I am proud that our mayor and the superintendent are committed to this long-term vision and are ready to lead this council. I also wanted to thank Supervisors Avalos, Kim, Christensen, Tang, Campos, and Marr for co-sponsoring this legislation. I also want to thank my legislative aide, Jen Lowe, who's always working tirelessly on these legislation. I want to thank the staff of the Mayor's Office, the San Francisco Unified School District, the Children's Funding Community Coalition, and our city stakeholders group for being so involved in this legislative process. I also want to thank our city attorney, Tom Owen, who worked diligently with our office on many rounds of amendments. You should have before you a list of minor clerical amendments made to the ordinance since the Rules Committee meeting. So without going through these minor amendments, I just ask that it be amended. Colleagues, let's work together to bringing families back to San Francisco. I hope you will join me in supporting the work of this council today. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other names on the roster. Supervisor Yee, just for clarity, you proposed a specific amendment?
The amendments are included in the handout legislation that you received, the newest version, and they're all minor, pretty much clean up language.
Okay. So, Supervisor Yee, are you making a motion to move forward with those amendments?
Yes.
Okay, Supervisor Yee has made a motion. It's seconded by Supervisor Campos. Can we take those amendments without objection? Without objection, those amendments passed. And on the underlining item, can we take this item, same house, same call? Seeing no objection, the ordinance is passed unanimously on the first reading.
As amended.
As amended. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, so we have done our commendations, and we will skip over that and go to our committee reports. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 34?
Items 34 through 36 were considered by the Public Safety and Neighborhood Services Committee at a regular meeting on Thursday, April 16th, and were forwarded as committee reports. Item 34 was recommended as amended, but with the same title. It's an ordinance to amend the health code to ban the use of smokeless tobacco products in stadiums, sports arenas, and playing fields, and to amend the definition of a tobacco product to include a device or any portion of a device used to consume tobacco products.
Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, President Breed. Colleagues, thank you for considering my legislation today to ban tobacco products at all baseball stadiums and athletic fields across San Francisco. I want to thank, first of all, my colleagues who have co-sponsored this, Supervisors Marr, Christensen, Avalos, Tang, Cohen, Weiner, and Campos, for your help. I'm pushing forward this legislation for a number of reasons. First of all, the negative health effects of smokeless tobacco are crystal clear. A recent report actually just released last week by our own UCSF's Center for Tobacco Control Research and Education shows that smokeless tobacco use substantially increases the risk of oral and pancreatic cancer, gum disease, nicotine addiction, and the initiation of cigarette smoking among adolescents. The report also found that the modeling of smokeless tobacco use by family, friends, respected coaches, and elite athletes is strongly associated with smokeless tobacco initiation amongst adolescents. As someone who used to play collegiate baseball and chew myself, I know how addicting the substance can be. I believe tobacco should have no place in our baseball fields or any of our athletic fields here in San Francisco where it can influence our youth. But most importantly, I'm doing this for my own children. As a father of three and a coach of my son's baseball team for the last 2 years, I want to send the right message to him, to our team, and to our entire city's youth by saying that smokeless tobacco shouldn't have any place in baseball, and it isn't necessarily to make it to the big leagues. The future of our children in San Francisco who play ball on our athletic fields should not be a future with chewing tobacco. What's shocking to me is that even as cigarette use continues a steady decline amongst our youth across our country, smokeless tobacco use has remained troublingly steady. Every year, over 500,000 kids ages 12 to 17 use smokeless tobacco for the first time. It's time we address this serious public health issue that's affecting our children and millions across our country. And it's once again time for San Francisco to take the lead by example, by showing our youth and public that tobacco is proven to be harmful as no place where our children play. The ordinance itself is very clear. It will not affect or dictate what individuals or players do on their own time or in their own personal lives, although certainly hope that it will contribute to the willingness to quit because of the negative health effects. It simply states that tobacco-related products, including chewing tobacco, will not be allowed at baseball stadiums or athletic fields across San Francisco. It will apply to everyone at AT&T Park, whether a player, a coach, or a spectator, and also all of our Rec and Park Run fields across our city. The penalty and enforcement structure is modeled after our city's landmark anti-tobacco and smoking laws so that we stay consistent as a city in enforcing all of our anti-tobacco and smoking efforts. I do recognize that this will be a big change for many, so the law, when passed, is slated to take effect on January 1st of next year to give all the parties time to prepare. I want to personally thank Major League Baseball for supporting our efforts to ban chewing tobacco on our athletic fields. I also want to specifically thank the tremendous coalition that has been leading this effort, not only here in San Francisco, but across our country and here in California especially, and specifically the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids and all of our coalition partners, including the American Cancer Society, the American Heart Association, the American Lung Association, the California Medical Association, and a number of San Francisco organizations, including our Parks Alliance, Tobacco Free Coalition, Medical Society, Dental Hygiene Society, our San Francisco Young Democrats, as well as up at the state level in Sacramento for Assemblymember Thurman for leading this effort at the state level. I certainly want to give a big thanks to my legislative aide, Jess Montejano, for all of his hard work on this issue. I do believe that the passage of this ordinance, San Francisco will lead the nation again in our anti-tobacco efforts and hope that in the near future we're able to strike it out of all of baseball. It will be another crucial step forward to continuing to protect the health of our children and our city. And colleagues, I ask for your support.
Thank you, Supervisor Farrell. Supervisor Marr.
Thanks so much to Supervisor Farrell and the local coalition, the public health coalition that's come together to move this important legislation forward. I think it's a really critical, historic ordinance. That's another step in the battle against big tobacco and large corporations that care more about profits than about the health of the public and especially kids. I think the big tobacco companies have unfortunately embedded themselves in our culture and continue to develop new methods to try to lure customers to nicotine addiction in new and insidious ways. I think San Francisco has been really good with our Department of Public Health and our San Francisco Tobacco Free Coalition in being diligent but also strategic and constantly moving forward to limit areas where people can smoke and to challenge big tobacco in new and creative ways. I think this ordinance is important in closing loopholes for future tobacco products like e-cigarettes that to prevent explosions in popularity of potentially dangerous products like e-cigarettes. Nicotine addiction, I think, is especially dangerous, as Supervisor Farrell mentioned, for children and young people 18 years of age and under. Their brains are still developing, as Dr. John Ma and others keep informing us. And these young people, they're highly susceptible to nicotine addiction and the advertising and marketing that goes along with it. Nicotine is the main addictive ingredient in cigarettes and e-cigarettes and considered as addictive as heroin or cocaine. I think many young people using smokeless tobacco, as Supervisor Farrell mentioned, are in extreme risk, and the Center for Disease Control Youth Risk Behavioral Surveillance found that nationally about 15% of the high school boys and about 10% of all high school students reported using smokeless tobacco products 2 years ago. And each year, roughly 415,000 kids ages 12 to 17 use smokeless tobacco for the first time. Lastly, chewing and oral smokeless tobacco contain known carcinogens and lead to oral, pancreatic, and esophageal cancer. And these types of cancers result in disfiguring surgeries and eventual death, as we heard in committee. I think the smokeless tobacco and other emerging tobacco products carry far less perceived risks among youth. And I think it's really the role of our Department of Public Health and the campaign to really raise awareness of how harmful these products are. Many people view smokeless tobacco and emerging products such as e-cigarettes as carrying few, if any, potential health risks. And it's really critical that we do the education to make young people and communities aware. Lastly, addicting youth at an early age is extremely profitable for big tobacco, as they may have a new customer for the next 40 to 50 years. They also need to replace older customers that are dying from tobacco-related diseases. So I applaud the coalition and Supervisor Farrell for moving this forward. Hopefully other cities follow suit, and we see this as a national movement to restrict smokeless tobacco and other unfortunate tobacco products reaching our youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Marr. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you very much. I, too, want to just take a moment to acknowledge the coalition that's around doing and on the ground doing the work to dismantle big tobacco. We, as a board, have an opportunity and I think a duty as well as a responsibility to continue to educate our young people every chance we get. And educating people around smokeless tobacco is certainly one avenue. We need to continue the education and advocacy around e-cigarettes. They are threatening the health and vitality of our future. Particularly, I want to pay attention to those communities that feel the advertisement, the uncanny, the astronomical level of advertisement dollars that come into working in poor communities of color that look to get folks hooked on these types of products, tobacco being one, sugary beverages being another, and we need to really wake up and educate ourselves as well as our community members about the adverse effects that these products have on our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you. I also want to thank Supervisor Farrell for bringing this legislation to us and giving us an opportunity to fight back the effects of tobacco. I didn't realize the impact the chewing tobacco has on our younger folks. I thought it was something that only professionals, maybe a few of them did. And when this legislation came up and then there was information about it, I certainly even have a deeper resolution to support this. So I hope I could still be added as a co-sponsor.
Thank you. Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you. I want to thank Supervisor Farrell and his office for their leadership. I'm happy to be a co-sponsor and support it. I'm also really pleased to see that despite the fact that I'm sure there are people out there saying that this is nanny state legislation and we're telling people what to do and so on and so forth, that we're now actually, it looks like maybe voting unanimously for this. They said the same things about the soda tax and other important public health efforts. Every time we try to protect public health, there are going to be people who are going to criticize it and say you're acting like a nanny state. But in the end, this legislation, like the soda tax, like other efforts, is really an important step forward to addressing a very, very real public health issue. And so I want to thank Supervisor Farrell for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Seeing no other names on the roster, colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this ordinance is passed unanimously on the first reading. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 35?
Item 35, resolution to determine that the transfer of a Type 21 off-sale general license from 225 11th Street to 201 Folsom Street, Suite 101 to SmartKet, doing business as Market on Main, will serve the public convenience in urging the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control to impose conditions on the issuance of this license.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 36, resolution to determine that the transfer of a Type 21 off-sale general license from 298 Munich Street to 4448 Mission Street for the Golden State Market and Deli will serve the public convenience in urging the Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control to impose conditions on the issuance of this license.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 37 was considered by the Land Use and Transportation Committee at a regular meeting on Monday, April 20th, and was forwarded as a committee report. Item 20 is an ordinance to designate 2178 through 2174 Market Street, also known as the Swedish American Hall building, as a landmark under Planning Code Article 10 and making the required findings.
Supervisor Weiner.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, thank you for considering this item, which will landmark one of the most historic buildings in San Francisco, the Swedish American Hall on Market Street. As I said in committee yesterday, with all the changes happening on Upper Market, some very, very positive changes and a lot of new things coming into the neighborhood, it's really terrific that we're able to embrace this historic symbol of the neighborhood and preserve it. And it's not just about landmarking the building. That's very important. It's also about what's happening in the building now. We're seeing new life being breathed into the Swedish American Hall. We will see live music return and food and drink, and it's going to be a wonderful improvement to the neighborhood. So, colleagues, I ask for your support.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiner. Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this ordinance is passed unanimously on the first reading. Okay, can we, Madam Clerk, go to roll call for introductions?
It's time for the introduction of new business, and we'll begin with Supervisor Campos.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And I just have one item to introduce today, and I want to thank Supervisor Jane Kim and Supervisor Eric Marr for co-sponsoring a hearing request on the proposal around the disposition of 30 Van Ness, which is a property that is owned by the city right here at the corner of the northeast corner of Van Ness and Market Street. As we understand the strategy in terms of the sale of this property, that this is part of the Department of Real Estate's Project Chess, and there are different pieces. And I think that it's really important in the context of having a housing crisis to understand whether or not it makes sense to sell this property and whether or not it also makes sense for us to consider building affordable housing on this site. I think that it's important for us to ask the right questions about what the right thing to do with this site is. We want to make sure that selling this property makes sense in the context of an affordability crisis. And one of the solutions, many of us believe, to this affordability crisis is to maximize the use of public-owned properties. And in this case, we have a property with a great location, and I think it makes sense for us to have a discussion. So we are asking that this item be sent to the Public Safety Neighborhood Services Committee. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos. Supervisor Christensen.
Today I have three items. One is an ordinance altering the existing Good Samaritan ordinance to allow property owners that are involved in the rehabilitation of public housing to qualify for the program. The public housing in District 3 is on track to be renovated over the next a few years. Last week, I co-sponsored resolutions that authorized funding of the needed repairs to 2 of those units. The good news is that our public housing is going to be made safe and attractive through these programs. Our focus now turns to residents who will be temporarily displaced and about where they will be housed during the rehabilitation. Supervisor Weiner's Good Samaritan ordinance allows property owners to rent out vacant units at below market rates on a temporary basis for tenants displaced by disasters. This addition to the ordinance will extend that to residential rent stabilization and arbitration ordinance to situations where tenants of the San Francisco Housing Authority are displaced by the rehabilitation of their housing units Under the Federal Rental Assistance Demonstration Program, this will enable those tenants to relocate with landlords who may seek to recover possession of their premises at the expiration of the Good Samaritan status. It's a small step, but one that we hope will help allow the agencies that are involved in relocation of these tenants to find additional units during reconstruction. Second is a request for a hearing regarding what our city is doing in relation to our current and projected water shortage. This has been another dry, warm winter. Predictions are that more will follow. Anyone who's traveled outside of San Francisco has seen the parched earth and the partially filled reservoirs. The public and the press have become more aware of this as a topic of discussion, which is welcome. Certainly these concerns have colored our discussions here in city government. It's beneficial, I believe, for San Francisco residents to be as aware as possible of where we stand with regards to our water situation, to be aware of what our city agencies have been doing in previous years to prepare us for the days that have come, and to make us more resilient when the drought continues, and also for all of us to consider additional steps that may need to be taken going forward. Third matter is a accept and expend resolution authorizing the San Francisco Department of Health to retroactively accept a grant in the amount of $213,369 from the Regents of the University of California, San Francisco, to participate in a program entitled Preterm Birth Initiative Project. UCSF has been the recipient of a 10-year, $100 million grant from Lynn and Mark Benioff and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to establish a preterm birth initiative. Prematurity is the leading cause of death in children under 5. 1 million children a year die due to complications of premature birth. As part of this program, UCSF will subcontract with the Department of Public Health to develop a local implementation strategy that includes identifying a bundle of intervention to deliver care across the life course for these women and their babies, and in planning a transdisciplinary postdoctoral fellowship in preterm birth, as well as a community leaders program and a scholarship program aimed at local and global preterm birth initiative pilot award recipients. This is good news both for UCSF and the Department of Health, and I'm pleased to recommend this resolution. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Christensen. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you. Colleagues, today I'm introducing a hearing to request an update on the Baby Hunters Point Core Community Benefits Agreement. Now, this agreement was negotiated back in 2008. It was meant for a multi-million-dollar expansion of workforce and affordable housing opportunities within the district. The agreement obligates the master developer to spend the funds on workforce and housing options for District 10 residents. Some of these obligations include a $27 million should be used for affordable housing initiatives to benefit District 10 residents, as well as $8.5 million should be targeted to job training for the D10 residents. The distribution of these funds is overseen by a conglomeration of community groups, which includes the Baby Hunters Point Shipyard Citizens Advisory Committee, the San Francisco Labor Council, San Francisco Organizing Project, the Bayview Project Advisory Committee, Lennar Urban, and ACORN, also known as ACE. Collectively, this group of organization is known as the IC, or the Implementation Committee. This group has a great responsibility to the community for the dissemination of these funds, and I'd like to request individual organizations to provide an update for the community on their work to date. The rest I submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, today I have asked the Budget and the Legislative Analyst Office to compose a report that will detail financial options and concrete steps necessary for San Francisco to deliver gigabit internet speeds to residents and businesses citywide. And I want to thank Supervisor Marr for his recent work in this area and look forward to working together on this as well. From my perspective, and I believe we all share this, access to the internet is no longer a nice-to-have service. I believe it's an access to fast, affordable, and reliable internet service should be viewed as an economic right. Today's world is increasingly demanding that our residents have digital literacy, and without access to internet, our residents will have a difficult time applying for jobs, completing homework assignments, communicating through email to their doctors, and even accessing government services and programs which are increasingly moving online. During my time on the board, I've made expanding broadband connectivity a priority. We've recently launched our Wi-Fi in the Parks initiative that's providing free SF Wi-Fi to 31 different parks and plazas and open spaces. And this is a continuation of that effort. Specifically, I'm requesting the budget and legislative analysts look at 3 possible options to finance this initiative. First of all, a public option. One of the potential options to expand internet access at gigabit speeds is for the city to fully finance the expansion through a dedicated revenue measure or different measures. This option will dig deep into what the cost of the city would be, and I want to continue to be mindful of the practicality of implementing this option and any debt that the city may take on while exploring this route. To date, we have only seen small to mid-sized cities implement this option, so I would like to see how it could potentially scale to a larger city like ours as well. Second, we're going to look at a private option. The report should examine and reach out to different internet providers to begin to provide financials on what it would take for the private sector or any one company or companies to finance the expansion of the network. Again, this was attempted in some form or fashion with Google and Earthlink a long time ago, but I believe both this legislative body and the public sentiment around that has changed ever since. This option also comes with a lot of variables and potential paths forwards, but I think it's a necessary option to examine further. And lastly, I'm asking our budget and legislative analysts to explore a hybrid option, one which would be a public-private partnership where both public and private resources could be used or leveraged to help expand our city's network. As we've talked about before, we have a large fiber ring to date, many of it as dark fiber that is being unused. And the hybrid model will see whether we can use that in conjunction with our private sector to move something forward that will deliver these gigabit speeds to every single San Franciscan. We've seen other cities such as Seattle start to move forward and explore this option in more detail because they've seen the benefits economically and also practically. It's an option to move forward to actually deliver results for our residents. Again, from my perspective, having internet access, high-speed internet access is crucial because work, education, healthcare, and the entertainment industry are all moving online. We're starting to see a national discussion percolate across our country about the importance of fast, reliable, and affordable internet access and the need to close the digital divide. Expanding our network to deliver gigabit speed internet connections to the home and businesses will be a significant undertaking. Let's make sure we know that. And it will take years to fully develop and implement. But the opportunity exists, and we should start planning now for that. I do want to ensure, as I believe all of us do, that every San Franciscan who lacks internet access across San Francisco has the same opportunities as everyone else. And I am mindful and do agree with Supervisor Campos' comments that as we continue to see a tech sector in San Francisco grow, as a Board of Supervisors and as a government, we should be looking at ways where technology can impact the lives of everyday San Francisco residents. So, colleagues, I look forward to sharing the results of that report and working with everyone here at the board to make this a reality in the years to come. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Farrell. Supervisor Kim.
Submit.
Okay. Supervisor Marr.
Thank you, colleagues. I really appreciate Supervisor Farrell's comments. And today I'm also joining in support of his efforts. But what we observed at the Public Safety and Neighborhood Services Committee last week was that the digital divide in San Francisco is huge. And many people, especially seniors, immigrants, many kids, which we call the homework gap because they don't have high speed to the home, are being left further behind because they don't have that kind of access that a more affluent family might have to complete their homework. But this digital divide is huge and gaping in San Francisco, according to the reports. I did a test of how fast my home connection was, and I'm below 5 megabits per second, which is way below high speed to the city. So I'm guessing that the hundreds of thousands of people, I'm included in that. I have some options to pay a little bit more to the couple of companies that are in the Richmond district, but we need much more of a choice as we think about high-speed internet to the home. It's really critical. I wanted to also say that that this inequity kind of that exists for folks that don't have access to fast, affordable, and accessible high-speed internet, as Supervisor Farrell laid out, is really critical for us to address as a city. We used to call it a digital inclusion strategy, and that's what I'm requesting, is that we will have the city attorney's office work with our office to draft an ordinance that will establish a digital inclusion task force. And I think it's critical that equity really looks at certain areas of San Francisco like affordability, accessibility, and adoptability, as our IT plan looks at, but especially looking at seniors and the homework gap and other issues as well. I think the task force will also ensure community voices as we look at the options that Supervisor Farrell put out there, whether it's a hybrid, a public-private partnership, or a potential of a Chattanooga-type municipal fiber network for our city. I wanted to thank Scott Blood from my staff for his great work on really looking at a lot of the studies and really ensuring that we have digital inclusion for the future of San Francisco. Also, tomorrow, as I mentioned, is the 45th anniversary of Earth Day, and San Francisco's celebrating with environmental justice groups in the Mission last weekend to environmental groups. But I think it's a time to reflect on the great progress we've made, but also all the hard work that's left to do as climate justice and other issues are before us. I think there are many events in San Francisco and in the Richmond district to celebrate, and one is the Academy of Sciences is holding a citizenship ceremony celebration of Earth Day. It's really a unique way to tie in immigrant rights and immigrant integration with Earth Day. It's a citizenship and immigration services celebration of Earth Day, special ceremony at the Academy of Sciences for 21 high school-aged youth. It's at 4 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, and the youth are taking an oath of allegiance in the piazza in the Academy. The youth come from 7 different countries, including China, Nicaragua, the Philippines, Russia, Brazil, Guatemala, Panama, and El Salvador, and currently live throughout San Francisco. And 2 of the youth from Brazil and Russia live in the Richmond district. Also on April 23rd, Thursday, Earth Day or the Balboa Theater has a great celebration with one of the Surfrider Foundation spin-offs, a nonprofit called Sustainable Surf that is doing great work in our communities. It's an evening from 6 to 9 at the Balboa Theater with films about legendary surfer Greg Long and sustainable work by many in the surfing community and Surfrider Foundation that integrates food, drink, art, music, and surfboards to really raise awareness about sustainability in our community and culture. Lastly, I'm really glad that Thea Selby and Ilsa Maggi are here because they've challenged all of us and the mayor to take on the Transit Riders Union Challenge. And I'll just say that I'm going to take the challenge, and I will be riding Muni for 22 days. I think it's in June, what you're asking us, and the Transit Riders Union really is challenging us to really understand the transit system. I know a number of us already do it, but my daughter does it every day, and I should follow her suit as well. So I wanted to thank the Transit Riders Union for their great efforts. It's critical that I and colleagues get out and experience all the facets of San Francisco life, including riding Muni every day. I wanted to also say that it's going to be easier for me because the Richmond District has a lot of improvements that have happened recently, and I applaud the MTA for the great improvements. Thank you, Dylan, and others that are here. For example, it's easier for me to ride with more service on the popular 5 Fulton Limited that our office really helped along with the MTA to establish, but we're calling it the 5 Rapid from now on. It's a new renaming that's going on. And the 38 Rapid service will make it easier on Sundays for me to get around as well. So I just thank the MTA and thank the Transit Riders Union for the challenge. We'll see how well I do in the 22 days, but I'm going to do my best. Okay, you guys? Also, this week is Bike and Roll to School Week. I just thank Sloat Elementary, kind of out there on the west side, west of Twin Peaks area today. But there are 7 Richmond District schools and preschools that are participating from the 4 elementaries that usually do it, Alamo, Argonne, Sutro, and Peabody in the Richmond to Washington High School. But I'm really pleased that pre-K schools are doing it, Peters Place on 3rd and Balboa, but also SF Schoolhouse as well. And I encourage all the families and even people that support schools and sustainable transportation to join us as we bike and roll to school this week. Also, I know some of my colleagues know that we've supported unanimously as a board support for the statewide soda sugar-sweetened beverage labeling bill, SB 203, by Senator Monning, and I'm proud that we voted unanimously a few months ago. But I wanted to say that it's critical right now at the state's Health Committee this week, and I'd like to thank Dr. Harold Goldstein and the California Center for Public Health Advocacy for keeping the pressure on to hopefully pass a strong soda sugar-sweetened beverage labeling bill this week out of committee. Also on Friday in the afternoon, I wanted to acknowledge that I'll be joined by Mayor Ed Lee and a lot of department heads in the Richmond District for our budget roundtable. And I know other supervisors have done their budget roundtables, and a few still have to do theirs. But at 4 p.m. at the Richmond Senior Center, located on Geary and 26th, with many community organizations around us, we're going to discuss the needs of the Richmond District with the mayor and the department heads. Also, a historic report was recently announced and revealed by the San Francisco Anti-Displacement Coalition yesterday, and their report on the state of San Francisco's eviction crisis is critical. Really, really important to read the report. It's called San Francisco's Eviction Crisis 2015, a report by the San Francisco Anti-Displacement Coalition. It has data from the Rent Board showing a significant rise in evictions kind of continuing in our city, and it looks at the evictions over time for a full decade. I think it gives us new insights into the citywide trends, discussing emerging patterns of landlord abuses and the price that evictions are having on every neighborhood in the city. The Richmond is heavily impacted from the data by not only the Ellis Act evictions, but also other no-fault evictions. And the number of seniors who are being evicted and pushed out, or those that are living in fear of displacement within our neighborhoods, is growing as well. I think the report concludes that based on present trends and absent a more robust policy in our city to address the displacement and eviction crisis, it appears likely that the rates of eviction will dramatically increase this year, resulting in even more massive displacement and gentrification. And I hope the document will help inform our policymakers, including those here in the room, on much more that we can be doing to save our communities and to protect the soul of the city. That's all I have today, and the rest I'll submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Marr. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Today I'm introducing a hearing request. This would be in conjunction with our Office of Economic and Workforce Development, our Office of Small Business, the Controller's Office, Planning Department, and DBI, and various other city departments, mostly focused about our permitting process in San Francisco. Recently, OEWD has been working with the Controller's Office on an analysis really focusing on our city's permitting process as it pertains to the restaurant industry. As many of you probably know, we recently launched phase 1 of our small business portal in San Francisco, and it's something that I think we should feel incredibly proud of, but it's also something that we really should have had, I think, for a long time now. I know the team comprised of Jane Gong, who and her other members over at DT now, who used to be at Small Business Office, worked really hard on launching it. And through that process, really learned from start to finish what it takes to start small businesses here in San Francisco. And it's no surprise that it's very difficult. And so the analysis, the detailed look at the restaurant industry, is something that we think should be discussed and serve as a springboard for how it is that we can continue working on how it is we can make our permitting process easier, more streamlined, more customer-friendly for our small businesses that are trying to open up in San Francisco. So the analysis through the Controller's Office will be released very shortly, and so we'll hold a hearing on that. And again, we will be discussing how it is that in next steps we would look forward to figuring out how it is that we address other industries as well besides restaurants in San Francisco. So I want to thank the Controller's Office for their work on this, as well as OEWD for leading this effort.
Thank you.
And the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Tang. Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Today I am calling for a hearing on the economic impact of San Francisco's outdoor events, fairs, festivals, parades. At my request, the city economist conducted a study reporting that our outdoor events are a significant economic driver for San Francisco. We all know how important these festivals and parades are for the city's culture. We now know that they provide significant economic benefits as well. The report was based on numerous data points, including an extensive survey last year of 3,644 people who attended various outdoor events in the city. At these 79 events, among these 79 events were included street fairs, outdoor concerts, fundraising runs and walks, and many cultural festivals. Events ranging in size from the very large, like Pride and Chinese New Year's Parade, to large concerts like Outside Lands and Hardly Strictly Bluegrass, to smaller neighborhood festivals like the Union Street Festival and the Fillmore Jazz Festival. The report by a city economist reveals several key findings from 2014, including $330 million in direct spending at these events, $1.1 billion in direct and indirect economic impact on the city's economy, food spending at outdoor events equivalent to 10% of citywide spending at restaurants and bars. And of the 3.3 million people who attended these events, 58% came from outside of San Francisco, and 85% of the visitors said that the event was the main reason they visited our city. Outdoor events sustain a significant share of jobs in the hospitality industry, including 7% of restaurant jobs and 6% of hotel employment. This report puts into hard numbers what we already know in our gut, but now know by the numbers, that our outdoor events are not only culturally important, but are essential to the health of our economy. Additionally, the report will help guide ourselves and other policymakers in determining how best to support outdoor events. Currently, the city, while certainly providing support for these events, does not do enough. The permitting process is too hard, lengthy, and expensive. And while larger events can often absorb these costs and delays, for smaller events, the process can mean the difference between surviving and folding. So today I'm calling for a hearing to review this economic impact study. At the hearing, the Controller's Office will present the study, and we will also hear from the Entertainment Commission and members of the community on various policy ideas to try to better support our outdoor events. We also sadly have an in memoriam today for Peter Measy, who was a member of the MTA Board of Directors. He passed away last Thursday at the age of 84. Peter grew up in Brooklyn and the Bronx, and after graduating from Williams College, he enlisted in the U.S. Navy, Naval Reserve, and finished at Harvard Law School. In 1958, Peter and his wife Carol moved to San Francisco, and for most of his legal career, he served as general counsel at U.S. Leasing. As an active member of the community, Peter served on the San Francisco Board of Education from 1976 to 1980, including as president in 1979. He was a 25-year member of the Presidio Heights Association of Neighbors and acted as president from 1990 to 92. He was on the San Francisco Parking and Traffic Commission and served on the boards of the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts, the Pocket Opera, and the California Bach Society. While he was known as an exceptionally hard worker, he never put his job before his family, and he is survived by his wife Carol, to whom he was married for 60 years, as well as his 4 children and 6 grandchildren, and the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. First of all, I want to announce that the Clean Team event that's going to happen in District 7, this is the 15th year that this has happened. And this year, the Department of Public Works will be hosting the event this Saturday at 9 a.m. at Lowell High School. It was a kickoff there. And just in case, you want to do more cleaning, the greater West Portal area is also having their cleanup day at the West Portal Playground at 10 o'clock. Today, colleagues, I am requesting a hearing to get an update basically on the work to prevent chronic absenteeism at our San Francisco public schools. Years ago, I had authored a policy to look at this whole issue of chronic absenteeism in the public schools. And when I say chronic absenteeism, just so people know what I'm talking about, it's really defined as students who have been absent at least 10% or more of the school year. And at the time, when I introduced it, people didn't understand the impact this has, because most of this actually occurs when kids are young, kindergarten, first, second grade. In fact, one school had 40% of the kids missing, which would be labeled chronic absentee. The impact is this: when we looked closely at which schools were doing well and which schools were having high cases of absenteeism, they were closely aligned. The higher the absenteeism in terms of chronic absenteeism, the lower their test scores. And one of the things that I realized at the time, that the only way we're going to tackle this is if the school district were to work with the city and our nonprofits to actually address it as a collaboration. And we found out at the time, this is several years ago, that they were having difficulty in finding ways to collaborate. So I'm hoping a few years later, fast forward, that things have changed and we actually are making a dent in this. I would like to hear more about the strategies that they're doing right now at the San Francisco Unified School District, and what they hope to do in the next few years in which the city could be helpful. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I just wanted to announce that I will be taking the challenge of 22 rides or 22 days, and I'll do it from a Excelsior District 11 point of view. I will hop on the 8X and I will wait for the 52. I will mingle and rub elbows on the 14 Mission bus. I will imagine the crosstown freedom of the 43. I will take the 29 to Stonestown and SF State, and I will pray when I take the J Church that I won't be switched back on, and the rest I'll submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Avalos. Madam President.
Thank you. Colleagues, today I have two very easy but cool items to discuss. I, along with the Mayor and Supervisor Avalos, will be introducing an ordinance that will allow PUC to be more flexible in order to purchase the cleanest and greenest power that's available out on the market. The energy market changes very quickly, and for clean power to succeed, we need to be flexible and allow the PUC the opportunity to do that. My goal is to move clean power forward this year. We've all worked really hard for many, many years to try and get this done, and it's finally going to get done. I'm really excited about this, and colleagues, when this item comes before you, I hope you will consider supporting it. The other item that I am introducing is a day late and a dollar short. The Department of Public Works, on an annual basis, we introduce Department of Public Works Week in San Francisco. Well, this week, it's in this week, from April 20th to the 25th. It's a little late, but I just want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the Department of Public Works and the hardworking men and women of that department. Specifically, I want to acknowledge them for their hard work yesterday at cleaning up for 420. Not only did they have staff out there, they had volunteers, and they had a large number of folks who participate in programs in my district in particular. It's been really challenging helping members of my community obtain employment, whether it's someone who has a criminal background record or someone who has barriers another way, as well as individuals who may have never worked a job in their lives. DPW is the place that provides them with that opportunity. And so I want to thank the director, Mohammed Nuru, for supporting the kinds of programs that help give individuals an opportunity to work, to clean up our streets, to clean up graffiti, to power wash the sidewalks, and to do what it takes in order to make our streets clean. And I know that it is a continued challenge to keep our streets that way. And so I do appreciate how DPW has also mobilized community. I know that they're going to be doing a mobilization in Supervisor Yee's district next week, but they continue to work with the community and provide support, provide tools in order to give us the resources in order to take care of our communities as well. So this is a resolution I'm introducing to declare April 20th through 25th the Department of Public Works Week. And so again, thank you to the department for their hard work in trying to keep our city clean, green, and beautiful. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Madam President. Seeing no other names on the roster, that concludes the roll. Supervisor Wiener?
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Clerk. One thing I neglected to mention, I will be joining Supervisor Marr, and I'm sure others, in taking the challenge that the Transit Riders Union has proposed for the 22 days in June. I think it's really important as public officials that we experience various types of transportation so that we all know firsthand what our constituents are dealing with and trying to get around. Muni is my primary way of getting around, and so the 22 days I don't think will be that hard, but I am going to try to step it up and try some lines that I haven't rode in the past. I've rode a lot of them, but I'm going to try to identify a few other ones so I can see what it's like for the lines that I haven't rode. I'm lucky that I live in the Castro and we have really strong transit access, and so it's important to try some of the lines that are a little bit more challenging. Supervisor Cohen, I do ride the T, and so I do understand the trials and tribulations of that line, but I know the T is not the only line that struggles, so I look forward to this.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. Supervisor Kim.
Since we're all announcing our commitment, I also let the group know that I would be participating. However, I'm challenged in the sense that I live very close to City Hall, so it actually would be very hard for me to take Muni versus not walking, but I will do the best that I can to ride on Muni for even a stop instead of walking the few blocks that it takes to come here, and also look forward to exploring other lines as well when I go to my evening events.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Christensen.
Okay, let's all jump on. I think we've already communicated with the group, but I take transit most days or walk, even days when I ride my car sometimes. Supervisors tend to move around a lot, especially this one. But it's a great idea and a good challenge. And in addition to riding Muni, I'm also trying to expand it. So hopefully I'll have enough time to do both.
Thank you, Supervisor Christensen. Supervisor Campos.
I guess I think we should all assume that everyone's doing unless otherwise stated, so count me in.
Madam President, I believe that concludes the roll call for the introduction of new business.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you please read public comment?
At this time, the public may comment generally for up to 2 minutes on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, to include the minutes, the policy discussion between the mayor and the board, and the items on the adoption without reference to committee calendar. Please note that public comment is not allowed on items subject to public comment at a board committee, and please direct your remarks to the board as a whole, not to individual supervisors nor to the audience. Speakers using translation assistance will be allowed twice the amount of time to testify, and if you would like to display your document on the overhead projector, please clearly state such to SFG TV and remove the document when you'd like the screen to return to live coverage of the meeting.
First speaker, please.
A very long time. Montrose had once said, of self and destiny, in natural way give rise to literature. Self and destiny in instructive teaching can be obvious. A full study would be like so, while in awakening of this word to having way of origin. Book said, in details, having a destiny, destined upon one with philosophy. Destiny in year of luck, destiny in year of danger. Destiny along years that one does make sure in terms of self-for dignity, to be for respectful for virtue. Also, in saying that, in applying of king's virtue, can expect eternity, destiny, again in good love of one's destiny. The Eugene book said, in order to know of destiny, one needs, firstly, to be happy with the way of heaven. In order to fulfill maximizing oneself, need to have full understanding of principle. For man, having a self in desire of taste, vision, listening, smell, relaxed senses of one's body form. Therefore, self must needing to have dignified control. Without such dignified control, then self of emotional desire will go out of bound. Self thus having of destiny within. Gentlemen, disregard of saying that itself. Not saying that itself for such excuse, so to put on dignified control. Book said, that's a way of joyfulness for heaven in knowing destiny. Destiny does also have having of self within. Gentlemen, disregard in saying that is destiny, for not having the excuse of saying that is destiny. Thus is virtue in application. Book said, that is known as having full understanding of principle to fulfill and maximize oneself. Since the ancient, for solely the one in knowing destiny can fulfill maximizing oneself. For the full fulfill maximizing oneself can expect of eternity. Further, that one can having love belonging to destiny. The latest scholar in talking of self and destiny, they misinterpret reasoning principle and chief force to be superfluous. Actually,
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, President Breed and other victims of the cabal. My name is Christopher Dahl, and I live at 6th and Howard, 14 meters and 10 blocks from sea level currently. I rise to explain how to implement the solution package to eliminate sea level rise that I offered last week. Remember, we need free energy to power the desalination, to get fresh water, to pump over desert land, to grow new trees. California can lead the world in this effort. California can establish a research regime which would use X-Prize-style research contests to develop the systems and the technology to harvest and distribute various forms of geothermal energy and to efficiently extract and distribute desalinated water over large areas. California can establish a planning regime which mandates the use of desalinated water for any new development and a tax regime which will encourage this. And California can establish a carbon assessment regime to enable and require the transparent and accurate balancing of a carbon upload burden with carbon download capacity and facilitate compensation for maintaining that download capacity. Members, I have laid out a path forward for our unbalanced world. You can find the beginning of this path at the Facebook page, World Carbon Balance, all one word. Add a hashtag to find it on Twitter. This is the only path on offer that isn't just fiddling at the edges of the problem. This will fix it. Let's start down this path. Thank you, President Breed.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Peter Alexander Cherneff. They must find it difficult, those who have taken authority as truth rather than truth as authority. Is it possible, like the man speaking about destiny, that we're soon to see the great uprising of the American spirit? Are we tired of bar lawyers in D.C. masquerading as Republicans and Democrats? And give me books in the library any day over the internet. Homeschooling without computers and internet would be an intelligent way to go. The Georgia Guidestones speak to genocide, 95%. So now we have the vaccines being forced upon children, like the ones that Dr. Maurice Wolin put down and gave to the Gulf War veterans from 1992 to the present. Only 3 million of those vets are no longer around to collect their pensions. And besides the vaccines that were piggybacked onto inoculations given to all slaughterhouse-bound sentients since 1951, 241 diseases and cancers delivered to the American public. Let's go to water. I could say all kinds of things about what's going on today with a HAARP-created drought, but rather than that, I'll make a suggestion to you and anybody listening to get this book, Governor Jerry Brown's Many Splendored Things, He and his lawyers for a long, long time spent an awful lot of money to make sure the public never saw the facts in this book, which deal with very topics were put upon us today. Okay, all right. Water bills, we got that. I will leave you a copy of my latest flyer, if I may. It's called Snoopy Spotlight.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Joe Brenner, the Center for Policy Analysis on Trade and Health, CPATH. On behalf of CPATH, we appreciate the opportunity to comment on the Board of Supervisors' resolution today on Fast Track, also known as Congressional Trade Priorities and Accountability Act of 2015. CPATH, based here in San Francisco, has been involved for many years in bringing a public health voice to debates on trade and sustainable development through research, policy analysis, and advocacy. The Fast Track bill aims to set out Congress's policy objectives for trade agreements and a proposed process to achieve them. The U.S. is now negotiating major multi-state agreements with significant implications for the public's health and domestic policy, including the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement, TPP, with 11 Pacific Rim nations, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership with the European Union, and the Trade and Services Agreement. Unfortunately, the United States Trade Representative has relied on trade advisors representing the pharmaceutical, tobacco, alcohol, health insurance, and processed food industries in shaping U.S. trade objectives and negotiating positions relating to public health and health care. Fast Track authority would allow complex trade agreements with sweeping implications for the public's health to leapfrog customary congressional legislative protocol and be put to a rapid up or down vote without public hearings or amendments, including those in the interest of protecting the health and safety of the American people. These deals, negotiated in secrecy, shielded from the light of public scrutiny, confer new and expanded rights to transnational corporations to protect profits over the rights of democratically elected governments and the public. San Francisco has a world-renowned public health program to reduce death from tobacco-related diseases. The TPP, like NAFTA, has a provision that allows private for-profit corporations to directly sue governments that try to have public health measures
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
United States is the worst fascist country in the world. It's killing every day black and another people on the street. It's made 1 million homeless concentration camp all over the streets from San Francisco to New York. In specific, a lot in San Francisco. I was evicted 83, but this Hitler Mayor Lee, who gave me proclamation best citizen of San Francisco, and after this evicted and doesn't want to help me. In your board of supervisor, it's welcome time when your Gestapo board of supervisor it's your obligation to help me to find why I am 83 years old. Nobody in the world could evict a person 83 years old without any reason. And I am sleeping on the street because your Gestapo board of supervisors with this mayor doesn't want to help me. I called you, Mr. Marr, and what they told me, we don't want to be involved in this, right? Who wanted to involve with this 83 years old Jew who survived Holocaust? And look what is going with the homeless people on the street. They're eating from garbage can, drinking from garbage. They are not people. You make them animals, dogs. Shame to you, but God will punish you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors, President Breed. I'm Joel Koppel with the San Francisco Electrical Contractors Association and Electrical Workers Local 6, here to invite you to our second and final day of our most recent Rebuilding Together project. This project was spearheaded by Utuma Belfry. She was recently appointed to the San Francisco Equal Pay Advisory Board. She's a member of the Local 6 and Inside Wireman, living down in the 94124, and also working out in Hunters Point in the 94124 also. So the Contractors Association gets together, donates all the material and the tools, and us wiremen, even myself, put my tools back on for a couple of days and help this building get back into shape. It was in dire need of electrical and life safety upgrades. This building's actually comprised of 2 addresses in District 5. You may know it as the Peacock Lounge at 522 Haight Street, which is open for certain private benefits. But also upstairs, 548 Haight Street, is the Unity Mutual Benefits Association that was created by African American Freemasons back in the 60s. So that tells you how old the building is. We're just here doing our part, giving back with material and labor. The job ended up costing about $42,000. It took about 40 of us. We started on the April 11th. We're concluding the project this Saturday, April 25th. Lunch is being served, and it's a really good lunch, by the way, I might add. But I wanted to just invite you, if you're there in the near neighborhood, please stop by. We'll also be hosting an event later on to recap the event. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. Really?
Sir, please speak into the microphone. Thank you.
Really, I'm speechless because, everybody knows the issues in the African American community. Everybody knows that our children are killing each other at a phenomenal pace. And I wrote this commission. It's called the Lacey T. Edwards Commission on Education. And I submitted it in 2011. And I sent copies to all the political representatives, and President Obama wrote me back. And he said that we lag behind the world, math, science, and technology. And still, I don't know. But what really, I guess, it's like my heart is crying out because a public representative, Deputy Gaines, lost her only son to the youth violence. And she still works for the Sheriff's Department, but you would never know. She's still humble, kind, and courageous. I think we really need to take a cold, hard look at the way we educate our children because it's not working. No one has all the answers, but we need to open up dialogue. And since 2011, just imagine how many children have lost their lives. You guys have to take some responsibility for that. Thank you. It's right here. I guess it's on communication. I'm really new to this, so I tried to approach one of you about this so we could bring it before the full board. But I'm not going to stop because I know.
Thank you very much, sir. Next speaker, please.
Is it on? Hello? Okay. So my name's Eleni Anderson. I'm a student at San Francisco State. I'm an activist with the Black and Brown Liberation Coalition there. I just wanted to share a few thoughts. Last week when you were discussing new business, there was brief discussion of some way that we could get more in-law units in the city, some kind of, we could try to come up with ways to encourage more the production of more units that would be affordable for students. Like housing is a huge problem for us. I need a new place to live this summer. I'm really dreading going through that process. It was really hell last time. I'm really disappointed that the contract with Cypress Security was reinstated or whatever. I think you guys
Madam
really
President, that item is on our agenda today, and I have paused the speaker's time. The Cypress contract cannot be spoken about today.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Okay. Anyway, I think you know how I feel about that. Also, please, no new jails. That's not the answer. And they're building these Target Expresses around the city. They're building one on Ocean Avenue in my neighborhood. That's going to really hurt small businesses in Ingleside. We don't need that Target. I don't know why that's being built. So we need to stop having these corporate department stores taking business away from the pre-existing small businesses that are already serving just fine. Also, we as students really could use a break with public transportation. There's no student pass right now available. We really need student passes. And like I said before, please keep public housing and affordable housing as a priority. And any idea to help students specifically find housing would be greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hello. My name is Dana Rose. I work in disease prevention. Last time I spoke here a few weeks ago, I talked about the devastating harm that synthetic estrogen caused to women taking hormone replacement therapy. Cancer, heart attack, stroke, birth defects. Never should have been allowed on the market until it was thoroughly tested. The estrogen cancer hypothesis dates back to at least the 1920s, was enhanced by numerous studies and individual accounts of endometrial and breast cancer in women who were exposed to estrogen. Marin County suffered greater harm than any other region in the nation. I go to Marin often, talk about this matter, and the wonderful opportunity we have to prevent chronic disease through diet and lifestyle. I continue to get a great deal of harassment for discussing these matters, and especially for going to Marin. For example, my bicycle spokes have been cut repeatedly. 2 brand new space heaters broke within a 2-month period this winter. My 2 front teeth fell out a week after I talked at this meeting on October 28th. But the most important thing I wanted to mention is they, quote unquote, are getting into my room at night. A few examples: 50 to 100 jars of coffee and tea have become decaffeinated in my room overnight. 15 laminations I did about serious problems with our for-profit healthcare system disappeared from my room overnight. Thank you. I'll continue talking about this
Thank you very
week.
much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, President Breed and esteemed supervisors. My name is Thea Selby, and I'm the chair of the San Francisco Transit Riders. And we want to, first of all, thank you, those of you who've already committed, even before, in most cases, we've officially asked you. We really appreciate that. I'm here with a member of my board and our organizer to invite you and the mayor to participate in our upcoming 22-day Muni Challenge, where city officials will ride Muni as many days as possible from June 1st to the 22nd. This is a fun, positive pro-transit campaign, and it's an opportunity for you to promote your own commitment to public transportation, showcasing that you care about the future of Muni. Why 22 days? It's one day for each of the years since 1993, when San Francisco voters passed Proposition AA, a measure put forth by then San Francisco resident Jerry Brown. Quote, city officials and full-time employees shall travel to and from work on public transit at least twice a week. 22 years later, this policy agreement has never been acted upon until now. Minnesota legislators took on a similar challenge in March with the Roll With Us campaign using the hashtag HowWeRollMN. By participating, politicians across party lines sent a powerful message to their constituents about their support for public transportation. Participation is simple. We're asking you to tweet while riding on transit every day for those 22 days, posting it to Twitter with an optional photo using the hashtag OnBoardSF. If you can't take transit on one of those days, tweet why with the same hashtag. The tweets will change your placement on the leaderboard, which we have a draft of for you to look at today. The event will kick off with a press conference on Monday, June 1st at 1 p.m. at City Hall, which we'd love for you all to attend. There will also be a party at the end of the event where we can celebrate the 22 days of riding Muni. The 22-day Muni Challenge is a great opportunity to show your support for public transportation and to get your name out to the 200,000.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, John William Templeton. Yesterday I presented on the California African American Freedom Trail at the American Educational Research Association. And on May 18th, we're working with San Francisco Travel and the Market Street Association to do a dedication for the William Leidersdorf statue at Leidersdorf and Pine. So I hope you will keep that date in mind. Also in June 26th, we're doing a tour of the African American Freedom Trail for the American Library Association. So it's continuing to get recognition around the country. One of the things that I just mentioned at the OCII Commission hearing is that as we study these historic sites, we're also aware of how quickly they are being diminished and eroded. We suggested to that commission that there be a comprehensive list of all the community benefit agreements that have been done not only through the redevelopment agency but also through action of the Planning Commission over the past few decades, in order that we would be able to evaluate the impact of those. And hopefully it would go towards an environmental impact statement that will actually look at the impact of our development activities on the African American population. So I would hope that you would encourage the Commission to take that seriously and also act accordingly in your own activities. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Good evening, Supervisors. I was just at a meeting with the commissioners upstairs for 4 hours. I'm here to talk about accountability. Now, I came here before, and I'm speaking fast, and I'm in semi-retirement as an activist, but I'm stepping up as an entrepreneur in communications. Accountability here at City Hall. I'm just not going to name no names. I was very disrespected yesterday from a supervisor's office here that I'm not going to tolerate anymore, and I hope we could talk about that later. Now, here we have room 200, Ed Lee, the mayor, in my community with his office now. He want to be reelected. Well, I'm telling Ed Lee right now because he knows me. We worked together when he was with the HRC. And my name is ACE. But before he comes tripling through the triplets, Supervisor London Breed, this man, Ed Lee, came to our community in 2011 through 4 or 5 different black businesses. Shortly after that, every one of those businesses closed down. And now he's in my community, our community, with the election, re-elect. Well, he's going to have to come talk to our community because we really upset. Now, getting back to what I wanted to say, San Francisco here has to be accountable. The police department, DA's office here. I want to do my first show here in San Francisco, what I call the round table here at City Hall. Most of y'all call it Silly Hall. My first show opening up is about law enforcement. I want to have Jeff Adachi. I want to have Chief Shear. I want to have a public defender, and I want to have all of those foreign law enforcements around my first round table, so we could talk law enforcements. Okay, that's my first show as an entrepreneur. No longer am I an activist. But I'm here telling you, and City Hall, and everybody, all the department heads, lawmakers, and all of these people here, I'm here to serve the community, but I will not be disrespected when I say me, my community. My name is Ace Darman, and I'm...
Thank you, Mr. Washington. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Myra Sutton. I'm a global policy analyst at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which is actually based up the street here in the Tenderloin. I am here to endorse the resolution number 150375 to oppose fast-tracking the TPP. The EFF has been following trade agreements for close to a decade now, since it started to include digital regulations that would have an impact on users' rights to free speech, privacy, and innovation online. And what we know from the TPP and other similarly undemocratic and secretive trade agreements is that it contains what we know is from leaks. What we know from these leaks is that it contains provisions that would facilitate and incentivize online platforms to silence users' speech online, to take away control from users to repair, resell, recycle their own digital devices. Provisions that would prevent whistleblowers and journalists from coming out to report on corporate wrongdoing by criminalizing access and disclosing these secrets online. And additionally would prevent lawmakers from passing rules in the public interest by enabling investor state courts, enabling corporations to take governments, local to state to federal governments, to court over policies that would, quote unquote, undermine their expected future profits. So we urge all of the supervisors to vote for this resolution today. And we are part of a large coalition along with Sierra Club, the AFL-CIO, and dozens of public interest groups across the United States, urging our lawmakers and our representatives to come out against Fast Track and to come out against these secretive, undemocratic agreements that directly undermine the public interest. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Xiomara Castro, and I work for Citizens Trade Campaign. I'm here to speak in favor of item number 41. The TPA, or Trade Promotion Authority for the TPP, will expand the same broken trade model that has led to a $912 billion trade deficit, loss of millions of jobs, and attacks on the public interest policies. This resolution is an important step in making sure that we stand for working families and the environment. The free trade agenda led by corporations has taken over sound international policy making and left us with hugely negative impacts. The Trans-Pacific Partnership threatens to exacerbate job losses, wage suppression, and displace millions internationally, as we have experienced with the impacts of the North American Free Trade Agreement. The TPP would only serve to expand corporate rights and even to the point of endangering our hard-fought accomplishments in public interest and health. The TPP includes a dangerous corporate court system. For example, policies like the smokeless tobacco ban that was unanimously passed today could be seen as a barrier to corporate profits by big tobacco companies that make up over one of the 600 corporate advisors. This team has been writing and negotiating the TPP with our federal government and without the interest of the public. And we've been locked out of this negotiation for about 5 years now. Furthermore, the TPP's partner countries include nations that would have serious human rights abuses, such as Vietnam, that's been repeatedly cited by the U.S. State Department for jailing political dissidents, suppressing free speech, and repressing unions. This resolution would speak loudly to our congressional members who are receiving an unprecedented amount of pressure from the President of the United States and corporate interests to fast-track this agreement. This resolution would join with growing numbers of cities like Seattle, Berkeley, and Richmond and make a critical impact to bolster fair trade. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am lucky enough to follow two of my coalition partners, so don't have to say too much about why I support the item number 41. However, I represent Food and Water Watch. We are a consumer advocacy environmental organization based in Oakland, but we have thousands of members here in San Francisco. We are opposed to the TPP and Fast Track Authority because of the threat that we believe it brings to our food and our water. Food and Water Watch has worked actively across California to work on local bans against fracking. We've worked for common sense labeling like country of origin labeling, GMO labeling. The TPP would put all of those at risk. Across the country, we see communities rising up to protect themselves, to get common sense labeling. However, with certain, again, leaked from what we know of the secret TPP agreement, small municipalities would be put at risk of international trade tribunal lawsuits. So that's one aspect of it. We also see it as, we work a lot on seafood safety, food safety in general. So with the TPP, our borders would be flooded again with unsafe seafood imports, putting consumers at risk. We have fought very hard in this country for food safety standards. We see the TPP as a race to the bottom on a lot of this. And San Francisco supervisors supporting this resolution opposing fast track, I believe, will have a huge impact and urge our congressional representatives to oppose this bad deal as it is not in our public interest. So thank you very much, and I look forward to your support.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I'd like to put this up on the TV. Yesterday, I got on the Jessica Stan show on KFAX to talk about the 240th anniversary of the shot heard round the world, which was Sunday, April 19th. But what Jessica Stan fails to grasp fully, and what you fully fail to grasp when we're dealing with the shot heard round the world, and Oklahoma City, which obviously was planned, that it should happen on that particular day, April 19th, 95. It's been 20 years. Can you believe that? How time flies. 20 years. But Jesus said Jerusalem would be trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And the times of the Gentiles is a period of 2,520 years that did end in 1995. It ended in 1995 when Oklahoma City happened. Now, I remember, is this up on the TV? Oh, here we go. Well, let me just read this. I remember when Bill Clinton, that big hypocrite, he blamed either Alex Jones or Rush Limbaugh, one of those guys. Alex Jones is actually the best. He's head and shoulders above everybody. I listen to talk radio, and I'm a very good judge, and he is the best, Infowars.com. But it was either him or the other guy, and it was either Alex Jones or Rush Limbaugh. And talk radio in general. That's what Bill Clinton blamed Oklahoma City for. But still, it's God's way of saying that Judgment Day is coming. Okay, it really is. The very next day when that Sabbath year ended, year 2520, was the beginning of the Jubilee. Now, May 20th will be 7,000 days from the Jubilee. May 20th will be 7,000 days from the end of the times of the Gentiles, 36 70-year cycles.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
President Breed, supervisors, my name is Tim Paulson. I'm the Executive Director of the San Francisco Labor Council. And as you know, we represent over 100 unions here in town, over 100,000 men and women. And every single union in San Francisco is opposed to TPP. And I think I can say on behalf of the entire labor movement that we believe that the TPP should be voted down. As you all know, it's been introduced in both houses in Washington, and the votes are not there yet. And there's still an ongoing active campaign to stop this piece of legislation. It's undemocratic, and as everybody knows, since NAFTA was first introduced back in almost 20 years ago, there's hundreds of thousands of American jobs that have either left the United States or the pressure on wages and benefits for the so many workers that are affected by these bad trade policies. People still don't seem to learn the lesson. So I want to thank John Avalos and those of you who I've spoken to already for supporting this item number 41, and I think a statement from San Francisco, a big union town and also a progressive town and a major city in the United States, would go a long way in terms of our national campaign to stop this horrible legislation. So we urge you to support this, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Next speaker, please.
Members of the Board of Supervisors, I'm here today. Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. I'm here today to call out something that you're obviously aware of because you're the cause of it. When public comment started today, all but 3 of the members of this board got up and decided to go have conversations with other members of the public, with members of their staff, with anybody but listen to the public. They are so concerned about what the people who voted to put them in those seats have to say that they will do anything they can to ignore every single word. I think any voter in San Francisco who votes for you should come here, whether or not they speak, to just observe how you treat public comment. First, plan on the whole afternoon because it could be anywhere from 2:30 to 8:30 before you get a chance to speak. You'll get 2 minutes instead of the 3 mandated by the Sunshine Ordinance because they would rather bloviate for an hour on roll call for introductions than they would listen to the citizens who put them in those seats. They will not obey the laws. I have 19 orders of determination on various city agencies, and I have 4 members of this Board of Supervisors who still have not replied to my immediate disclosure requests in violation not only of the Sunshine Ordinance, but the California Public Records Act. I think if a voter who really values his or her vote came here and saw the way you treat the public during public comment, they would have your backsides out of those seats so fast it wouldn't be funny. I wouldn't be surprised if some of you got recalled. You should be ashamed of the way you treat the public, and especially the way you use procedural issues and other BS to try to silence people you don't agree with and then let people you approve of go on and on and on.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Tom Gilberti, 37 years ago, Mayor Moscone put a gay man here in one of these seats. He opened up an inclusion. He made it more. You might say he brought the Good Samaritan into the fold. And right now we have bishops. And we have laws in Arkansas and Indiana that want to kind of say, okay, gay people, you can be gay, just go back to the closet. That's my perception. I don't know if anybody wants to go back to the closet. I don't think they would. They should. 26 years ago, I started pushing this wheelchair, this wagon, and not all Muni's buses were wheelchair accessible. And now they are. Every one of those buses are wheelchair accessible. I don't want to go backwards. Waiting for the Muni buses, you can see the corporate Google tech buses coming and going. I don't see no wheelchair emblem on those. I don't see no special doors to get the wheelchair people into them. 2 months ago, the renters, if you rent in the city and you get a rent increase, you get 2 months before you pay. That gal went from $2,000 to $8,000. Well, I would like to give the buses that arrive in this city 2 months to make their buses wheelchair accessible. And for everyone that's not accessible, at the stop, they get a $1,000 fine. They're billion-dollar corporations. And also, when they stop, they can pick up Muni drivers. It's Muni riders. It's a sharing economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public that like to provide public comment at this time? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Madam Clerk, can we go to the adoption without committee reference?
Items 40 through 46 are being considered for immediate adoption without committee reference. A single roll call vote may enact these items. If a member objects, a matter can be removed and considered separately.
Supervisor Farrell?
42, please.
Supervisor Avalos?
40 and 41, please.
Okay, on items 43 through 46, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On items 43 through 46, Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Those resolutions are adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please read item 40 and 41 together?
Item 40 is a resolution to commend Margie Stokes on the occasion of her 81st birthday for her leadership, commitment, and uncompromising dedication to San Francisco's children, families, and child care providers, and declaring May 2nd, 2015 Margie Stokes Day in the city and county of San Francisco. Item 41.
I'm sorry, we're going to take them one at a time.
Okay.
Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking them one at a time. So, colleagues, Margie Stokes is a resident of District 11. She's turning 81 on May 2nd. She is a remarkable woman who has done a lot to advance early childhood education in San Francisco. She has started with colleagues in the child care providers world, the Multicultural Child Care Consortium, which is a place where a lot of child care providers, family daycare providers, and center-based providers can come together and share resources. One of the things that's happened over the past 20, 30 years is that child care providers have actually had a number of incentives in place to be able to get greater education and early childhood development, and that's really led to a real increase in the quality of care in child care in San Francisco. And Margie Stokes has been one of the leaders over the years. She's also instrumental in creating the Family Daycare Providers Association, which has also played a large role in connecting child care providers and ensuring that the city is responding to the needs of high quality care and also the need for child care providers to learn their craft. So it's a great day when someone like Margie Stokes is able to still be in the mix and helping to move San Francisco forward for children. And so May 2nd will celebrate her birthday and as Margie Stokes Day. Also, downstairs there's an exhibit of African American leaders, a photography exhibit, and Margie Stokes is downstairs, one of the persons photographed. It's an amazing picture, and I suggest if you haven't been there to see the photographs is to go check it out. And so colleagues hope to have your support on this item.
Okay, colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call, without objection? This resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please read item number 41?
Item 41, resolution to urge San Francisco's representatives in Congress to oppose Trade Promotion Authority for the proposed Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, expressing concerns about the draft elements of the TPP and to support fair trade practices and agreements that protect jobs, workers, and the environment.
Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you very much, President Breed. I want to thank, first of all the people who came for public comment in support of this resolution, and we also worked with many of them to help craft this resolution. I have an amendment of the whole today, which incorporates language from some colleagues here, and as well as from the Labor Council and Electronic Frontiers Foundation. Most of all, the country right now is headed, and it's mostly the Obama administration itself, is headed towards creating an agreement that spells great trouble for workers, the environment, not just in the United States, but all over the Pacific region. We know from experience from the North American Free Trade Agreement and the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade that transnational corporations, along with government, have worked to create bodies and mechanisms that only serve the transnationals at the expense of workers, the environment, workplace standards, the laws that we put in place to protect residents in our countries. And the Trans-Pacific Partnership that's moving forward will be just another one of those efforts. And we now know that both the Senate and Congress, House of Representatives, have put forward resolutions supporting fast tracking and giving the Obama administration the ability, without any recourse and accountability to create an agreement with other partners and transnationals that would really run roughshod over the standards we have in this country. And so it's up to us to make sure that we protect our local laws, our state laws, and our federal laws that protect our environment, our free speech rights, and our ability to participate in democracy here in this country and around the world. So I hope, colleagues, that you would support this resolution. And I do want to thank again folks who've contributed language for this resolution to go forward. Thank you.
So, Supervisor Avalos, is there a motion to make changes?
Accept amendment of the whole that you
Okay.
have all before you, a copy of the new resolution before you.
Okay, Supervisor Avalos has made a motion to make amendments to the resolution. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Marr. Without objection, the amendments are made. Supervisor Marr.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Supervisor Avalos and the corporate accountability organizations that have worked on this issue for many years as the Trans-Pacific Partnership has moved forward. Really concerning many communities, from environmental groups to labor to the Electronic Frontier Foundation and those protecting privacy rights and protection of whistleblowers, to Food and Water Watch and those that are safeguarding our food and water safety. But I wanted to thank Dr. Joe Brenner and Dr. Ellen Schaefer for bringing up the public health concerns, and thanks Supervisor Avalos for integrating the language amendments as proposed by the Center for Policy Analysis on Trade and Health, CPATH. I really think that really helps us, as 4 years ago we challenged big tobacco's efforts to try to weaken multinational corporations' efforts to weaken tobacco controls. And I'm really glad that it's a unity of many different types of organizations, and it's an even better resolution as it moves forward. And thank you to Supervisor Avalos and the many different members who spoke for building a broader movement against multinational corporations and transnational corporations' efforts to expand their power. And I think the fight for national sovereignty to community voice is so critical. So this is a really important resolution, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Not seeing any other names on the roster. Thank you, Supervisor Avalos, for your leadership on this. Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 42?
And just to follow up on item 41, that item was as amended, Madam President.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. As amended.
Item 42, Madam President.
Item 42, yes.
Okay, item 42 is a resolution to declare May 4th, 2015 as the Junior League of San Francisco Women at the Center's Honors Day in the City and County of San Francisco.
Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, President Breed. Colleagues, just quickly, I would ask for your support today to declare May 4th Women at the Center Honors Day for the Junior League. This is an organization of women here in San Francisco committed to promoting volunteerism, developing the potential of women, and improving communities through leadership and trained volunteers. In particular, the reason why I brought this forward, there are two amazing women who are being honored this year at their Watch Luncheon, Trish Tatum Ostott and Sissy Swig. Ms. Ostott, she was the president of the Junior League a number of years ago, a director of grant making and the Community Programs Council director. She was the president of the San Francisco Legal Auxiliary, a board member at St. Francis Hospital, and many other organizations here in San Francisco. Rosalind Sissy Swig is known to many of us here at the board and an icon here in San Francisco. She's the founder and president of ComCon International. Rosalind Swig, ArtSource, and Partners Ending Domestic Abuse. She's on the KQED and NPR Foundation board, the past chair of the Contemporary Jewish Museum, national vice president of AIPAC, and past president of the Jewish Community Federation of San Francisco. She received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the San Francisco Arts Commission and the Women's Human Rights Award from the San Francisco Commission of the Status of Women, and many other honors. So, colleagues, I hope today you would join me in supporting these women and declaring this day for the Junior League of San Francisco and their awards.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Farrell. And not seeing any other names on the roster, colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. And colleagues, we need to return to item number 43. I realize that we adopted 43 through 46 as a package, but Supervisor Marr has changes to item number 43. So colleagues, without objection, I'd like to rescind the vote for item number 43.
Madam President, we would need a second on that.
Moved by Supervisor Marr, seconded by Supervisor Farrell. Without objection, the vote is rescinded on item number 43. Now, Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 43?
Item 43 is a resolution to support Assembly Bills 404, Assemblymember Chu, 1385, and 1397, Assemblymember Ting, to reform rules and procedures in California's community colleges and accreditation process.
Supervisor Marr.
Thank you, colleagues. It's just a very simple amendment, changing the language on the name of one of the organizations that have supported this. I wanted to thank Supervisor Cohen for adding her name as a co-sponsor in addition to the other co-sponsors. I urge your support for the amendments and the resolution as amended.
So Supervisor Marr has made a motion to amend, seconded by Supervisor Farrell. Without objection, the item is amended. And colleagues, can we take the underlying item as amended without objection? Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please read the imperative agenda item? There is
Madam
none.
President, I do not believe we have an imperative item today.
Okay, that's great. Is there any in memoriams?
Yes, today's meeting will be adjourned in memory of the following individual. On behalf of Supervisor Wiener, for the late Mr. Peter Mezzi.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, this brings us to the end of the meeting and the end of our agenda. Madam Clerk, is there any further business before us today?
That concludes our business for today.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for being here.